1.
Good evening. Welcome to this regular board meeting of the Poway Unified School District Board of Education. It is 6:08 on June 25th. Notice to all, a recording and broadcast is being made at the direction of the board. It may capture images and sounds of those attending this meeting. We start tonight with some sad news. A Design 39 student, Jillian Izzy Oberiano, has passed away. Izzy was just finishing up 5th grade when she was diagnosed with heart and lung failure in April. She underwent emergency surgery in Pittsburgh, but unfortunately on June 15th, she passed away due to complications from the surgery. She was described as a sweet, kind, and patient girl known for her infectious smile and bubbly personality. Our hearts ache for her family's loss, and we extend our deepest sympathy during this difficult time. Please join me in a moment of silence for Jillian Izzy Oberiano. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I invite you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For our report out of closed session, I'll turn it over to our substitute clerk today, Ms. Couvret.
Thank you. This is a report out of closed session for June 25th, 2020. Closed session began at 4:18. The Board of Education took the following action in closed session. Regarding 2.3 A through E, there's no reportable action from closed session. The board will take action in open session agenda item 8.1. For 2.4-A, there's no reportable action. 2.6-A, in the matter of public employee appointment, Employment Director, Technology and Innovation, Information Technology, on a motion by Patel and a second by Couvret. The board voted in closed session to appoint, oh goodness, we didn't write his name in.
Kenneth Wall.
Thank you, Kenneth Wall, right on there. Unanimously, with O'Connor, Radcliffe, Couvret, Beatty, and Patel, all ayes, and absent Zane. This is why I'm not.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ken. Regarding 2.7A, conference with real property, there is no reportable action. 2.7B, no reportable action. No other reportable action was taken during closed session. However, we will be reconvening after this meeting to address 2.6B. Closed session adjourned at 5:55.
Thank you very much. And I am getting some notification that the live stream might not be working. I hope we can fix that up.
It's up. If anyone can just refresh, it is working.
Great. Item 3.3 is members in attendance. I see our very last meeting with our board member, Ms. Akins. So nice to see you tonight. And let's see, our other board members are all here with the exception of Mr. Zane, whose mother passed away just a few days ago, and he flew out to be with family for the funeral. So condolences to Mr. Zane and his family. At this point, our final welcome to the public from our student board member, Ms. Akins. I'll turn it over to you. No crying.
I know, I'm going to try not to. Thank you, Madam President. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Board of Education. Due to recent updates and changes ordered by Governor Newsom as referenced in the California Department of Public Health, this June 25th, 2020 PUSD Board of Education meeting is being conducted entirely online via virtual video conferencing. All public comments were submitted online as outlined in the directions in the agenda. The intent is not to limit public participation, but to protect public health by following the recommended guidelines in San Diego County's orders limiting attendance at public assemblies. Public comments open session items. Public speakers were requested to submit comments by the public comment form link between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. prior to the start of the 6 p.m. open session regular meeting. If indicated on the form, comments submitted via online public comment form will be read aloud during agenda item 4.2, public comments, for the corresponding agenda item. Public comments are limited to 400 words or 3 minutes with 5 public comments per topic. Item 4.2 is placed on our agenda to enable members of the community to bring items that are not placed anywhere else on the agenda to the board's attention. The Brown Act does not permit board action or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda, but your concerns will be referred to staff. With that said, welcome and thank you for your comments.
You're muted, President O'Connor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. I should know this by now. Item 3.5 is the approval of the agenda sequence. Is there any questions or comments? Now would be a great time. Otherwise, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
And is there a second? Thank you very much. That's motion by Dr. Patel, second by Ms. Couvret. Any discussion? All right, I'll go to Ms. Akins for the preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. And everyone else, all in favor? Aye. Okay, I gotta locate everyone on the screen. Thank you very much. That passes 4-0, 5, unanimous. Next, our oral presentation, student board representatives, not in school, so we're moving on to 4.2. These are our public comments. This is placed on our agenda to enable members to bring items that are not placed anywhere else on our agenda to the board's attention. So public speakers were requested to submit our comments by 5 p.m. Per board bylaws. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes each with a maximum of 15 minutes per topic. So our substitute clerk will be keeping the 3 minutes per comment, and I'll keep a 15-minute overall tally. Okay, Ms. Peck, first speaker, please.
Thank you, President O'Connor Ratcliffe. There are multiple topics that we are addressing in public comments. The first topic is on the July 30th alternative graduation. First comment is by Cheryl Hernandez in Poway. Dear members of the PUSD board, my son, Jimmy Hernandez, is a member of the class of 2020. He is a Bronco from RBHS. He has been patient and supportive during all of this unprecedented time. As family, we've done all we can to remain patient, supportive, and hopeful. But the recent news of not allowing social gatherings is quite frankly paralyzing the spirit of our family. We've been supportive of the community, families, and students who've gathered to have their voices heard in protest. We have listened and heard the view of BLM on Instagram and Facebook pages from here in the PUSD community. We have witnessed and listened to the gatherings of over 1,000 individuals at Balboa Park. Most recently, we followed the story on CNN that said there has not been an increase of COVID cases directly linked to the recent protests and large gatherings in support of the BLM movement. This is an important time for so many and a great moment in time where social justice is making great strides forward. However, with all of these proactive steps, we're being told that the gathering of our graduates and families is not important enough to supersede the guidelines of the county. Please step forward and challenge our county and possibly the state on this ruling. I'm hoping that you cannot support the gatherings of many more people who are not taking protective measures, and that you will allow this very important moment for these students to go by without a very unified, loud voice saying it is not fair to these young people. Please trust the families and students will behave. Please let those who make this ruling know that it cannot be simply labeled as a large social gathering. The lives of these young people matter. Graduation matters. It matters for the first generation of graduates who represent families overcoming obstacles to succeed and graduate. It matters to the families who have sacrificed to make sure their student completes studies and overcomes the obstacles. It matters to the young man who is legally blind, who struggles with daily health issues, who is a Hispanic young man beating the odds of overcoming the discrimination of being labeled disabled and who has succeeded beyond any measure his doctors believed he would. It matters to our son, Jimmy. Thank you. This is from Shannon Henkel, San Diego. My name is Shannon Henkel. I reside in 92129 within PUSD boundaries. My only son is a graduating senior from Westview High School 2020. I'm speaking today to express my concern regarding the planned postponement of the sit-in graduation ceremony. As a parent of an only child, this rite of passage means so much importance to our family. His father is a Marine veteran who lives out of state and was unable to attend the drive-through graduation due to travel constraints, but is planning on traveling to the July 30th graduation, as has been indicated will occur by PUSD. We have committed years of time and money invested in the district. The class of 2020 has lost so many milestones granted to every graduating class prior and in the future, such as winter dance, prom, senior trips, spring sports, spring senior nights, senior picnic, yearbook signing, which Westview has not yet received, and grad night. All the remaining budget for the expenses of these events should be focused on a sit-in graduation and planned accordingly. The kids have not been able to see their friends since Friday, March 13th, and have not been able to celebrate their class, listen to the speeches, celebrate valedictorian and salutatorian acknowledgements on top of everything else they have lost, and the fact some may never see each other again as a class of students growing up since they were in kindergarten. I see there is nothing on the agenda to address the graduation ceremony in July. Is Poway Unified going to allow the class of 2020 to be left aside because they would choose to move on to future school years? If so, that is an extreme injustice to our children, our families, and our communities. The class of 2020 needs to have a sit-in graduation as promised by PUSD, given restrictions are being lifted. With ESS and summer school now open, I do not see how the district can justify not putting a plan in place for each high school to have a sit-in ceremony. If it is a budget issue, I think the parents and students of the district and the graduating class would appreciate one normal thing about their senior year. I hope the district will take into consideration the emotional toll the class of 2020 has endured and prepare plans for a July 30th commencement. This next comment is from Susan May, San Diego. Good afternoon. My name is Susan May, a resident of 92129 within PUSD boundaries for over 20 years. Both of my children have been educated within PUSD since attending preschool at Sundance Elementary beginning in 2001. I have a 2020 grad from Westview High School. The drive-through celebration was well thought out and appreciated given the current limitations of COVID-19. Having said that, it is our understanding based on the PUSD survey results last month, parents and especially students overwhelmingly shared their desire to postpone commencement. The district has set a tentative date of July 30th for the actual in-person ceremony. We hope the decision by PUSD was genuine by offering a delayed commencement. The rite of passage to include valedictorian and salutatorian speeches, along with the official presentation of the class of 2020, is valuable in assisting our kids in moving forward. Even if the event can be held for the students only, please do whatever possible within the state guidelines to support the in-person commencement event. The class of 2020 didn't experience many traditions typically held during senior year, such as winter formal, spring sports senior nights, Disneyland, senior award ceremonies, end-of-year picnic, yearbook signing, to name a few. Of course, it's understandable at the same time we are all leaning to your leadership to support the last opportunity for these kids to see each other and celebrate 6 feet apart and their achievement of graduation together in July. The cost is a major hurdle I can imagine, having missed all spring events. Where are the funds? Consideration should be given to this class to fund the event if money is a concern. I know many parents, students, underclassmen, and alumni will volunteer 1,000,000% to support the commencement ceremony, as noted in the survey as well. Lastly, communication is key, always and more so during uncertain times. Please don't label emails as final for the class of 2020 until after the class of 2020 is able to close this chapter post in-person commencement. Optimistically yours, Susan May. This is from Dayan Joyce, San Diego. I'm a graduating senior at Westview High School class of 2020. I would like to submit my comments regarding the July graduation ceremony and how important it is to our graduating class. We appreciate the drive-by graduation, but we would really like to be able to sit amongst friends, even if it is 6 feet apart, and celebrate together one last time before everyone leaves for college. I still miss my parking spot, my lunches, my favorite teachers, track, and most importantly, my friends. The last 4 months, and it would be nice to have something back after everything we can't do. I would like my family who lives out of state to be able to watch me walk across the stage and to hear friends shout out when we get to the end. Please hold the graduation ceremony in the stadium July 30th so we feel like we have one thing we got back. The final comment on graduation is Lisa Lee, San Diego. I am asking that the board approve the July 30th graduation continue as planned. These students have missed so much, and we are looking forward to having this one celebration. Please don't cancel this one event. Moving on to the next topic on racism. First speaker, Will Prince, San Diego. We don't want your no place for hate expletive. We want repercussions for students and staff who make racist comments or actions. There is no reason why a person who reports discrimination or harassment is told there is nothing we can do about it. We expect a whole lot more from a district that claims to provide an inclusive and diverse community. Anjani Shrivastava, UC Santa Barbara. I appreciate the effort about this resolution, but I would like to see specifics. Please provide a clear timeline of goals, plan for resource allocation, research strategy for implementation. As a student, parent, faculty member of PUSD, I am invested in seeing change through real anti-racist actions. I'm tired of this. PUSD, please speak with the minorities in your district.
Christine, Ms. Peck, should these be under the other item, under our resolution item?
We did have certain public comments that requested to specifically be under 8.4, but these requested to be under public comments 4.2.
Okay, thank you.
Next comment is Lisa Pradhan, San Diego. BUSD needs to acknowledge that it's actively created an educational environment that ignores racism and does not prioritize the lives of its Black students and their families. On your Juneteenth Facebook post, you said you're committed to doing better. How are you going to change your curriculum to center anti-racism starting in kindergarten and first grade and continuing until 12th grade? Tangible steps need to be seen within the curriculum, and it's crucial beginning at this level to acknowledge the default child is not a white cis male. This needs to be reflected in the literature provided and in normalizing conversations about differences in culture, skin color, and heritage. According to Ed data at PUSD, over 55% of students are students of color. When we were students from the years of 1998 through 2010, there was no more than 2 times where we were required to read work by non-white authors. The history of Black resilience in the face of institutionalized white violence should not be optional. Students need to leave PUSD understanding that the impacts of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, voter suppression, the prison industrial complex, the limitations of the 13th Amendment, intergenerational trauma, and other atrocities that are still with us and have a real impact on the lives of everyone who is and isn't in their classroom. When we create education systems that don't accurately reflect the students attending these institutions and don't acknowledge the history of racism in this country, we set students up to fail. We need more teachers of color in our schools, and teachers who promote or ignore racism need to be accountable to change. Black at PUSD has hundreds of stories outlining a culture of disrespect and violence to Black and brown students. These stories are heartbreaking and all too real. Though 10 years have passed since we were in high school, it's clear that not much has changed. We can't have one more generation go through an educational system that's ill-equipped to understand and dismantle racism. The time for change is now. Next is Cori Heyman, Oceanside. As our nation faces the realities of racism within our communities, I am demanding for our school district to address these issues with realistic actions. As an elementary educator, our social studies curriculum is outdated and not teaching our students history of all races within our nation. The Exploration program reaches all elementary students and could pivot its focus to cultural diversity. We have seen several cases of name-calling and bullying rooted in racism at our schools. These behaviors will continue and will be reinforced if we do not change our values and curriculum. Poway Unified needs to address the racism that has continued in our schools for decades. A moment of silence is not enough, Action needs to be taken in the form of policy from our district. Next is Kyle Luciani, San Diego. We have been increasing the rigor of our writing. We have been increasing the rigor of our ELA lessons. Why have we not increased the rigor of our social studies curriculum? Not only should classroom teachers be provided with up-to-date and culturally relevant curriculum, but I would love if exploration put a focus on cultural diversity, ability awareness, and social emotional growth. The team of teachers can still focus on VAPA, STEM, and physical activities, but with a cultural emotional focus for all of them. For art, look at a civil rights artist, maybe even the culture behind graffiti. Examine how artists use imagery as a means for expressing the divide in society. For STEM, discuss methods of making all public spaces accessible to those with limited mobility, how theme parks with large public events can be designed to meet the needs of people with increased sensory intake, or explore how people created assistive technology they see their peers using throughout the day. Outside activities could be about entire community building and about managing one's emotions. We have seen several cases of name-calling and bullying rooted in racism and bigotry at our schools. These behaviors will continue and will be reinforced if we do not change our values and curriculum. Poway Unified needs to address the racism and overall intolerance that has continued in our schools for decades. Action needs to be taken in the form of policy from our district. Can you pause the timer, please? All right, continuing. Thank you. Nicole Walter, Poway. Racism needs to be addressed and dealt with properly. This has been happening over and over again, and you all still do nothing about it. So many students have been victims to racism by other classmates and teachers. They need to be held accountable for the pain they have caused. All teachers need to educate their students about racism, white privilege, Black history, the real history, not what they teach in history books that lie about how white men are seen as heroes in this country and the history of other cultures, etc. Kyle Da Silva, San Francisco. POSD must do more than commit vague promises to change and addressing the current social crisis. We need tangible changes in the district, from changing the white-dominated curriculum to hiring practices of the district and expanded student services. Communities from Minneapolis to Oakland to the corner of Pomerado and Twin Peaks have stepped up to demand drastic changes to the systems of oppression that have blighted all systems from policing to education for far too long. As a student for nearly 10 years in the district, 2002 to 2010, I did not take a single class that focused on anyone besides white heterosexual men. As primary school students, we built models of California missions without acknowledging the genocide that they perpetrated. We learned about manifest destiny from the point of those who believed in manifest destiny. Our civil rights curriculum amounted to a few pages of nonviolent excerpts from Dr. King while eschewing his socialism and projects like the Poor People's Campaign. Our only advanced placement history classes were European civilization and US history that followed the journey of British colonists to slave-owning rebels to genocidal expansionists. This showed us that if you want something serious, you get something white. Our literature classes gave an obligatory nod to the Harlem Renaissance, nothing more. The world's scientific achievements spanned the slice of the globe between the Royal Science Society in London and the laboratories in Copenhagen. Most bizarre, we never followed the effects of this history through to redlining, to the carceral state and prison labor we have today. History is in the past, we learn. Things aren't the way they used to be. I was led to believe that we had moved on and that the way things are now is not because of the way things were before. And we learned that this was good. All this was taught to me by exclusively white teachers, and they were fantastic teachers. Big ups to Tanya Leonard, Lori Brickley, Mr. Pyle, and Dr. England, but they were all white. And as a white male student, I never had any reason to question this narrative or setting. The white supremacy that is unintentionally taught through this curriculum has damaging effects on students of color, who make up more than 55% of the collective student body, according to ED data. You can and should read the testimonies to racist behavior by students and teachers on Black of PUSD's Instagram account. I witnessed this behavior, but was never equipped with the resources or knowledge on how to be a good ally to stand up against this. The onus to speak up against this fell entirely on children. Again, children who had been marginalized by a system that we all took for granted. This is unacceptable. It's detrimental to students of color whose worldview excludes them, and to white students whose view of the world becomes comfortable and unchallenging. This isn't the kind of growth environment that helps anyone. The California State University system is showing tangible steps in the right direction. Mandatory ethnic studies.
Christine, that's the alarm.
Go ahead and finish. You only have a few more sentences, so just go ahead and finish, Christine.
Okay. There are reforms too, for example, intentional hiring practices, diversity in leadership, and resources like expanded mental health care that can abate the issues that plague the district. This was a good place for me to grow up, but it can be better. It's admirable to change your views, change your commitments, grow as an institution. Some of my peers educated themselves independently. It's your job to educate the next generations. Do not fail them the way you failed mine. So was that time limit just on the individual speaker or overall topic? Okay.
You have additional topic time.
Okay, I will read the next comment. Salem, Samson, Poway. I'm a Black woman who attending Poway Unified Schools throughout my K through 12 education, culminating in my graduation from Poway High School in 2013. Students continuously that demeaned my Blackness, from calling me an N-word to making fun of my bag lunches and making assumptions about my intelligence or athletic abilities based off of my race. I would, however, also like to highlight the fact that these actions were almost always met with inaction from teachers and administrators who could not be bothered to properly educate me, let alone stand against racism. As a student, my parents continuously advocated for my academic success, even though teachers frequently pushed back and discouraged my entry into advanced courses. Following the publication of an Iliad article about racism in school, several Poway High students were the target of cyberbullying from a group of white supremacist students who hurled racial epithets relentlessly and harassed the writer of the article individually. This was presented to administrators and met with profound silence from everyone. Ultimately, one member of the white supremacist group was suspended for a couple of days, which sparked a white supremacist movement in the school, with many demanding their peer be allowed to return to school before his suspension was up. Poway High School did not adequately punish these students and did not take that opportunity to teach about anti-racism, but rather stood silently against hate. Poway High School and Poway Unified Schools have a disgusting legacy of providing unequal education to its marginalized populations and caters much more in favor of its white students. Abraxas is disproportionately Black and brown. Administrator action needs to be direct and specific to rectify this. That includes the hiring of more teachers of color, more resources to fund a more equitable education for students of color, and anti-racist training education for all students and staff at the schools. This should begin in our elementary schools and continue throughout high school. That's the end of that topic. The next topic is on school reopening, and there's one comment from Jun Cutter, San Diego. My name is Jun Cutter, and I'm a parent of 2 PUSD students. I'm an active member of the school community at Delsler Elementary and just completed my 2-year term as PTA president. Since March, I've been in the trenches alongside parents across the district, helping my kids log into their Zoom meetings, keeping track of the half dozen passwords needed to submit their assignments online, and painfully realizing how difficult it is to manage a child's education while both parents are working full-time from home. California's stay-at-home order has been particularly hard on our children. Despite our best efforts as parents and teachers, we simply cannot deny that there has been a toll on our kids' education and socialization. Not to mention the heartbreaking reports of hunger and abuse and all of the unreported cases that receive no attention because the child is no longer under the watchful eye of their teacher. For far too many kids, school is their safe place and it has been taken away from them. The broad range of medical professionals in my personal network all agree schools should open in the fall. Studies show that COVID-19 infection in children is less frequent and severe than adults, and child-to-child transmission is almost unheard of. This may be explained by the way immune systems and receptors work differently in adults versus children, particularly those under the age of 12. While we cannot go back in time, I firmly believe that schools and PUSD should fully open themselves to students in the fall. We must weigh the ever-changing risks of the COVID-19 virus against the permanent educational, emotional, and social damage we are inflicting on the next generation. For low-income and at-risk communities in particular, each day we keep children away from the safe place of school, the deeper and more irreversible that damage will be. Human interaction is a key piece of the educational experience. In a world where kids have become increasingly distant from one another, they become even more reliant on technology and social media to help them feel connected with their peers. The result is an ever-increasing worry about their generation's capacity for empathy and grace. Keeping them apart seems like the wrong move. The question looming over our children's education weighs heavily on my heart. I implore the trustees and administration of PUSD to fully open the schools for those families and teachers who want to return to business as usual, while providing a distance learning alternative for those who aren't quite ready to return. Whatever your preference, I think it is important to recognize that one size does not fit all, and parents should be supported in their right to choose what is best for their family. The next topic is on budget.
Ms. Peck, shouldn't these comments should wait until we get to the budget item?
Madam President, I leave that up to you.
Yes, please. Let's wait until the budget item.
Ms. Peck, you're on mute.
There is one final public comment under 4.2. The topic is miscellaneous. This is from Amy Katerina Del Mar. Hi, my name is Amy Katerina, and I'm a founding member of San Diego Schools, an advocacy group established to help parents make their voice heard in improving education in San Diego County. Our goal is to improve transparency, accountability, and equity in the school districts throughout the county. There are over 500,000 kids in our county. They deserve the best education possible. We're living in difficult times. All school districts face serious challenges ahead. Budgeting, parents need to have a voice in making sure those cuts do not hurt the education of their kids. School reopening, parents need to have a voice in that plan. Policing, parents need to be involved in how school site policing is handled in their district. Our mission is to provide assistance and advocate on behalf of involved parents. The best interests of our kids need to come first in every decision made. The volunteers at San Diego Schools can help parents to better understand how their school districts operate, get involved with their districts to make things better, and ultimately get the most value for their students' education. Education is a complex thing. There are many aspects of public education that are a mystery to the community. We aim to provide relevant and timely information to help clarify that and help parents see the impact on policy and procedure in their schools. We will have community-based learning opportunities such as webinars, Zoom meetings, and discussions on diverse topics like what is the role of a DPAC. We hope that parents will gain a better understanding of how education works to help them participate in that process. We have established a website at sandiegoschools.net and a related Facebook group, San Diego Schools, intended to act as a central hub for information, giving parents and students the ability to find answers and resolve problems. Everyone is encouraged to visit our site, sandiegoschools.net, to sign up for our email list and join our Facebook group to stay in the loop on upcoming events and activities. Parents and kids deserve a voice in their child's educational opportunities. We look forward to working with parents and school districts towards that end. Putting kids first should be the first priority in education. Join us and help make that happen. That concludes public comments under 4.2.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peck. That takes us to item 4.3, update on annual report of activities from the Special Education Community Advisory Committee for 2019-2020. Mr. Mizell, I'm excited about this one.
Thank you, President O'Connor-Ratcliffe. So each year, the Board of Education is updated on the activities of the Special Education Community Advisory Committee. This year, the chair of this committee, Rosabelle Agbayani, will be making a presentation for the present school year. Please join me in welcoming her now to our meeting tonight.
Ray, you want to welcome her? I don't think she realizes she's ready.
Roosevelt, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You're on.
It appears it's still connecting to the audio.
Okay. Well, she looks ready. Do we want to consider pushing this item and coming back to it when we can resolve the technical difficulties we're having?
We already approved the agenda in this order.
Okay. Just new territory on Zoom.
Yeah.
But it also won't change anything because we'll have to re-invite her back into the meeting and everything. So it won't change her audio.
Well, maybe if she logs in from a different device. Oh, now she's disappearing altogether.
I think she just turned off her video. Maybe she can call you on your cell and then you can play it on the Zoom and then we can see her. So you want to try that?
Yeah, let me see.
She can also call in.
Problem solving. We got this. Yes.
Isabel, if you can hear me, there might be a audio button on the bottom left.
Dr. Burks, her chat feature is working. So can you chat it to her? Send it through chat?
Can you hear us now, Rosabelle?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Let me get back to my Zoom screen. Sorry. A little bit nervous, even more nervous now. Let me just go ahead and start. I don't know if the slideshow is on. Is the slideshow on? Is there... Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening. My name is Rosabelle Agbayani, and it has been my greatest honor as a parent and an alumni of Poway Unified School District to have served as my first year as the chair of the Community Advisory Committee. As a parent of a child with special needs, it can oftentimes be very challenging and lonely, thinking that you're the only one with who knows the struggles that you and your child have to overcome on a daily basis. But when given an opportunity to channel that energy into something positive, productive, and worthwhile for the benefit of not only your own child, but to possibly impact the lives of children in your community, you start to feel like you're a part of something special. And this was my experience leading the Community Advisory Committee. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the CAC members, all of whom have dedicated their time, talent, and treasure to help us live out our mission to promote and encourage positive connections among students, parents, and district personnel. I also wanted to recognize that the work that we have done this year would not have been possible if it weren't for the partnership we have with our district liaisons, Lisa Dreyer, Jody Payne, and Greg Mizell. Special mentions to Margaret Godman and Danielle Strauss for helping us to make sure our special education families received invitations through the Connect Ed messaging system and help post meeting minutes and agendas to our CAC website. It has truly been a great team to work with. Slide 2. Next slide, please. So last year, when we presented our end of year report, we shared some pretty lofty goals that we hope to accomplish. Honestly, coming into this role as a new chair, I wasn't sure of what to expect. But I came in with my boots strapped and ready to learn, and learning is something that I did so much of this year. Next slide, please. Our first goal was that we wanted to improve outreach to families at individual school sites and continue to develop and improve inclusive programming with opportunities for non-English speaking families to receive information. One of the first things we did was in August 2019, the CAC hosted its very first meet and greet, where the CAC members and district staff got to spend a beautiful afternoon at Hilltop Park, getting to know each other and finding out more about what the CAC does in our community. Our hope was to welcome parents and families at the beginning of the academic year to set the tone for the message we wanted our community to hear. We are the advisory committee for our special education students and families, and it was so special to see and interact with the community we are here to serve. Moving forward to the fall, to improve outreach to families at individual school sites, the CAC membership subcommittee invited 8 additional new members and 2 alternate members to our team. All members represented parents and community members from a variety of disabilities and grade levels. Knowing that by increasing our outreach to schools throughout the district, we could better position ourselves to understand the unique needs of our students based on school culture, disabilities, and resources. Lastly, we made sure that written communications regarding meetings and public comments requests were translated and made available in Spanish to our Spanish-speaking families. The committee has proven itself to be dedicated to communicating that our special needs family in Poway Unified School District not only feel welcomed, but are a very important part of our community. Next slide, please. Goal number 2 was resource collection and distribution. These goals were aimed to share and learn about best practices in special education, as well as collaborating with district staff to develop a resource library with information and materials available online for parents seeking information. Within our communications subcommittee, the team has worked with district staff to give feedback on parent resources that are accessible and useful on a newly developed website. In addition, we invited guests from outside of PUSD to present on topics relevant to our programs and to help increase the capacity of our CAC membership to build a better understanding of best practices in special ed. In January 2020, Ms. Kristen Stratton from the Morton Advocacy Group presented on the topic of dignity and disability. Her presentation was a validation of the work the district has been doing for the past few years as we move towards a specialized academic instruction model. Everyone should be treated with dignity regardless of their ability, sharing the knowledge that, quote, when someone is truly included, no one will question their presence, only their absence. Everyone has a role to play in improving the quality of services we provide for our special education students at Poway Unified School District. Parents, educators, students, and administrators must work together to make the necessary changes happen to improve the quality of education for our students to thrive within their environments. The CAC does important work for the district by making available a safe space for people to share their viewpoints and to provide a viable connection between students, families, and the Poway Unified School District. Next slide, please. Goal number 3 was education. We wanted to help build knowledge about disabilities to parents, teachers, and community members, educate the public about special education law, and offer a resource fair for families replete with district and non-district service providers and opportunities. In November of 2019, we hosted the Fall Parent Education Night, focused on navigating the individual education plan process. District staff presented on the topic of IEP 101, and a parent member of the CAC led a discussion circle on creating an IEP roadmap, including educating parents on general information about IEPs and IDEA. A special education staff resource fair was also held in the lobby that gave families an opportunity to learn and ask questions about different special education services provided throughout the district. This event was well received by the community. Families found it helpful to learn from both district staff and parents who have been through the process. Families especially appreciated the opportunity to participate in open discussions about their concerns for their students' education. Teamwork and collaboration shows that we are a community that cares and seeks to support our families by providing guidance, information, and empathy, that we're all in this together. Next slide, please. Goal number 4 was oversight and advice from the CAC. Our CAC members felt that it was important to provide input to the district about ways to improve the IEP process, offer support and advice in recruiting, training, and retraining instructional aides to improve continuity of services for students, continue verifying the ongoing development of dyslexia programming and services in elementary, middle, and high schools, continue the conversation about mental health services and basis classroom stability, and provide advice and input regarding the local plan. This year, we focus on improved and positive communications between parents, educators, and district staff to facilitate dialogue and mutual understanding. To help engage members of our community who have specific concerns, the CAC developed a public comment form available both in English and Spanish, and published it online for members and of the public to use. These written forms allowed members of the public to bring up topics that could either be shared personally by attending a CAC business meeting or having the comment read aloud at a CAC meeting by one of the members. In return, we found that the district staff updates through our district liaisons kept the committee and the public informed of special education activities, including updates regarding the SAI model schools and their progress, changes due to the response to school closures as a result of COVID-19, and other topics that were of concern to our community. We have been so very fortunate to have district staff who have been receptive to the community's concerns, and having CAC members represented in our community who understand that everyone's voice is important and communication is key to making progress. Next slide, please. Last but not least, the Community Advisory Committee, in lieu of our annual Special Education Awards of Excellence event, still wanted to take the opportunity to thank all the teachers and the staff who have done a tremendous job this year to keep our students engaged. We wanted to give our community an opportunity to thank all of the individuals for making a positive impact on the lives of students who receive services. This past academic year was a challenging one for everyone, and we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize all of those who made the year great. We had over 750 responses to our year-end recognition opportunity, and each of those individuals received a personal email with a special thanks from those who had submitted. These connections between parents, students, teachers, and special education staff members are so important because we need to take those opportunities to recognize that the work that they do is invaluable. Next slide, please. So when school resumes in the fall, whatever that may look like, the PUSD Community Advisory Committee will be ready to resume our role. Our 2020-2021 goals will be to continue outreach to our PUSD special education community, promoting and encouraging positive connections among parents, district staff, and administration. Create opportunities for learning and information sharing in a safe space within the Community Advisory Committee, and continue to provide guidance in special education so all students become successful lifelong learners. Thank you very much for the time to share with you the work that we have done this year. I can't hear anyone.
Thank you so much, Ms. Agbayani. I really appreciate it. You have done an amazing job with the CAC this year, and all of your members have been extremely positive. I'm going to turn it back over. I think I stole this away from Associate Superintendent Mizell.
No, I would just echo your sentiment. Rosabelle, we appreciate you and your leadership. We appreciate the opportunity to partner with parents as always, and the progress we've made the last last several years has been significant. So still lots of opportunity ahead to continue to improve our students and families' experiences. And I look forward to working with you. I know me and my team, like all of us, right? Team PUSD, we look forward to working with you to reach a new height. So thank you for your report this evening.
No problem. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
If I could just say a quick thank you on that one. I know that a number of years ago, it seemed like there was an adversarial perspective between PUSD and parents of special needs kids, and to see this cooperation and enthusiasm, because it was my understanding that sometimes parents felt very alone and lost and didn't know what to expect. And between the work the CAC is doing with Craig's team, it just seems like that it gives the parents so much hope and support. And now they have mentors to ask questions to and figure it out so they're not alone. So I just commend your team, Greg, as well as the work of the CAC. And you guys have really made just tremendous strides. So thank you.
Having attended a few of their meetings this year, I can say that from my perspective, and although, I haven't been to every meeting every year, this to me felt like one of the most successful, if not the most successful years ever of the CAC, really making those connections with the community, with families, with our special education staff, and really being very focused in their work and successful at it. As you can see from that very detailed presentation, I can't think of another year that I've been working with special education in this district where there have been that many successful events, successful outreach efforts, and the whole thing. I think it's wonderful. We owe that to the families involved who are volunteering all of their time, as well as Associate Superintendent Mizell and his staff, who have had a very different attitude, a yes, we can, how can we help? Let's do this together attitude.
I very much agree. I agree. I think it's very much a collaboration, and I've been very fortunate to be in this position where we can see things happen and give each other high fives as a team. So go Team PUSD.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
All right. I guess we're moving on here. Unless anyone else has anything to say before I move. Ready, set, go. Okay. This takes us to item 5.1, which is approval of our consent calendar. I'll ask if anyone on the board has any items to pull. Ms. Akins? No? I'm Ms. Beatty.
No, thank you.
Dr. Patel?
Nothing to pull.
Ms. Couvret?
Nothing to pull.
Okay, and nothing for me. With that, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. On a motion by Ms. Couvret, second by Dr. Patel. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
That's 4-0. Thank you. Move us right. Oh, I did want to note one thing, that there are several items included in that consent calendar that we just approved that are priority 1 projects from our master facilities plan and regular routine maintenance. I'm glad we're able to keep doing those. I think it's important for the community to know that they're happening and appreciate that those are in there. We may not be able to get to everything on these lists in the future, but right now we're still managing to fit those in. So thank you.
Ms. Pack, I believe there was a public comment for agenda item 5.3B.
Oh,
That's correct.
uh-oh. We should have pulled that item then.
My apologies.
Okay.
If we need to go back and make a motion to pull 5.3B, I'm willing to do that. Can we do that?
Let's hear the comment, since we've already actually technically passed through it. Let's hear the comment, and if necessary, we can reconsider the item based on the comment. Go ahead, Ms. Peck.
The comment is from Gabriella Dow, San Diego, in regards to agenda item 5.3B. I am the parent of a PUSD student, a local taxpayer, and business owner. At the last board meeting, I observed observed an attempt in violation of the Brown Act to obtain board approval for the use of our taxpayer funds to provide PUSD legal representation for board members TJ Zane and Michelle O'Connor Ratcliffe. These board members are being sued for actions that have been deemed unconstitutional by our highest courts for targeting specific parents in the community and not allowing the comment on their official communication channels. Board members Zane and O'Connor Ratcliffe refused to recuse themselves from use of district funds for their personal legal representation during a 2018 board meeting, and they were joined by board member Patel in barring fellow board members Beatty and Sellers from reviewing the invoices being paid to controversial lawyers like Shinoff, despite stating that PUSD staff is allowed to view these invoices. I am requesting an independent audit of these expenditures, including any purchase orders or contracts voted on under this agenda and any other tonight. The taxpayer funds being used to try to protect board members Zane and O'Connor Ratcliffe from their own poor choices are dollars that belong to our students and teachers. The dwindling budgets should be spent on their education, safety, and future. An independent audit uncovered past criminal behavior just a few years ago and is needed again today to understand exactly how much of our money is being spent for legal representation of board members, as well as an explanation of why they are voting for expenditures of our money to serve them and not allowing their fellow trustees to review invoices and financial documents. It is no wonder there is such a lack of planning for our kids' education and return to school, as the focus is clearly on the personal needs of the board majority, who spends our money to serve themselves and uses PUSD staff and precious resources to cover their unethical and potentially illegal activities and votes.
Thank you, Ms. Peck. At this time then, I'll call, is there a motion to reconsider item 5.3B? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. 6.1, approval of resolution number 113-2020, entitled Resolution Regarding the Elimination or Reduction in Hours of Classified Positions as contained within Exhibit A and corresponding layoff of classified employees. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Madam President. Under California Education Code, requires that the Board of Education take the initial step of the elimination of a classified position prior to the actual personnel action that would result from that. On this resolution, there are 4 positions. One is an instructional assistant position at Valley Elementary, and due to lower enrollment in kindergarten for next school year, the position is recommended for elimination. The second is an instructional assistant position at Pomerado Elementary due to a reduction in Title I funding available for next year. The third is a position in the alternative education program as an instructional assistant due to a lack of work in the teen parent program. And the last is counseling assistant position in the adult secondary education program due to a decrease in student enrollment, which as a result has resulted in decreased funding for that position. The Personnel Commission will work with these 4 impacted employees regarding placement into another position in accordance with the provisions of Ed Code, the collective bargaining agreement, and the Personnel Commission rules for all layoff rights, procedures, and notifications. The board is asked to approve this resolution for the elimination layoff of these 4 positions.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to. Oh, go ahead.
Motion to approve, Ms. Beatty, second by Dr. Patel. Okay. Any discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's 4-0. That passes. Thank you very much. Light tonight for you, Mr. Jimenez. Lucky. Item 7.1, adoption of the 2020-2021 proposed budgets and approval of related criteria and standards. Mr. Little.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I believe our Director of Finance, Ms. Ramiro, is waiting to be admitted. Thank you.
Also, Madam President, there are 2 public comments on this item.
These are the ones that I pushed back to the actual agenda item.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm undecided whether we should take those now or after the presentation. Now? Probably now. I think that's how we normally do it. Let's take the public opinion, the public comments now, please.
Thank you.
The first comment is from Lynn Lorimer. San Diego. First, I would like to thank the district for doing their best to support teachers as we embarked on the unknown world of distance learning. The work done by our TOSAS, Tech Department, and LSS was incredible. Just like our classroom teachers, they too switched on a dime and delved into providing teachers with PD that was critical in moving us into online teaching. That being said, we've only scratched the surface and need to continue to provide teachers with the time to train in this area. Moving forward, I do believe we need to keep technology at the forefront so that we can be assured to meet the needs of all of our students. That being said, I am concerned about the proposal to purchase technology for all students in the district. Though I understand there were connection issues due to some students not having devices, the greater issue was poor internet connection. I fully support the district's initiative to provide devices for those that need them. However, I am concerned about such an expenditure, one that provides devices for all students in these uncertain times. We know that our budget outlook is bleak, and I do not feel that now is the time to spend that kind of money on devices, especially since many of our families are capable of providing their own. I hope that before you move forward on spending this much money for a one-to-one initiative, that you will consider determining which students actually need a device and not simply providing a device for all. Additionally, I think consideration needs to be made as to how we can support better internet connection for our families and also our teachers. If we are mandated to close schools and go into distance learning again for all again this year, it will be imperative that your teachers also have the technology at home to continue to provide rigorous content and instruction for their students. I implore you to rethink the one-to-one initiative and instead consider the following: devices for those that need them and adequate internet service at home, technology for your teachers that will aid us in sustaining a rich and rigorous program if we go back into distance learning for all, ongoing tech training for all teachers. Where's the training for the new platforms iReady and Thrively that are in the budget? Ongoing district-wide anti-bias training. The second comment on the budget is from Harold Carlson, San Diego. Dear School Board, it is my understanding that the district is planning on purchasing Thrively and iReady for classroom and distance learning use. I would implore you to include funding for adequate training for teachers, more than just a brief overview if you wish for these programs to be utilized effectively. Many programs have been purchased in the past with the directive to use said programs without the adequate training to do so. This then becomes an enormous frustration for teachers and students and a waste of valuable funds for our district when the programs are abandoned due to lack of understanding and engagement. Harold Carlson, Shoal Creek Elementary. That concludes our public comments for the budget.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peck. At this point, then, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Little.
Thank you again, Madam President. I believe we have a brief PowerPoint to share with the board and the community this evening. So this evening, staff presents the Poway Unified School District 2021 proposed budgets for the board's consideration and approval. As you'll recall, on June 3rd, 2020, we provided the board and community with a first reading of the proposed general fund budget. And since then, much has changed, while much has also remained the same. And we're going to review these dynamics over the course of this presentation. Next, please. Here is the agenda that we will cover briefly for this evening. Next, please. The general fund budget that we brought before the board on June 3rd was predicated, as you know, on the governor's May revised proposal of May 14th. Since then, the legislature has adopted a budget of its own on June 15th, which restored all of the reductions to K-12 education. And this past Monday, as you also know, the governor announced, after a week of negotiations, a budget deal with the legislature. The proposed budget deal is good news for K-12 districts. Funding will be held at 2019-2020 levels. Although there is no funded COLA, we do expect that there'll be some one-time funding approximating the amount of what that COLA would have been. There's about an additional $1 billion Federal CARES Act money that will be allocated to schools. The how-to still remains to be seen. Nearly $12 billion of deferrals over 2 years is how the proposed budget deal will mitigate the impacts of the lack of any federal assistance that is predicated in the budget. And there's also stipulation language no layoffs related to teaching or teachers, and as well as no layoffs for certain classified workers in the budget year. So just a caveat, as you know, we're still waiting for the budget to be approved. It's expected to happen this Friday or early next week. And then, of course, the trailer bills will follow. Next, please. So this means that tonight we're asking the board to approve the general fund budget as presented and based on the May revised assumptions in the governor's budget. As you know, this is the direction that we received from the San Diego County Office of Education. It's what districts within the county are doing in full realization that this will not be the fiscal reality that districts face in the fall. Once the state approves a new state budget, we will update this budget and bring it back to the board. By Ed Code, we have 45 days to do so. So we would anticipate bringing the board a revised general fund budget to its August 12th meeting for approval and for consideration. These are the budget assumptions built into our current budget, the one that we're asking for approval for tonight, based on the May revise. These have not changed since the June 3rd reading, except for the level of budget solutions. Next, please. You'll recall that when we reviewed the budget on June 3rd, we had about $7.85 million of budget solutions. We heard some concerns expressed by board members with respect to the state of our reserves. So we went back and we revisited our budget, and we found about another $5 million of budget solutions to add to the budget. Found is probably not a good word. Part of it came as we were closing the book. So for example, under the one-time savings, those additional savings in substitute and hourly employees, $1 million, those are funds that we didn't expend in 2019-20 as a result of closing our doors early, vis-a-vis the COVID-19. And those substitute dollars and the hourly employee dollars will just shore up our reserve levels as we move into 2020-21. We're also learning that we did not need to provide all of our SB 117 dollars to our food and nutrition fund. We thought at first that they would need all of that, but the state and the federal government have been reimbursing us, which we'll see a little bit later, pretty much at 100%, not quite. And so we've given them 50% of those monies, again, to make sure they have enough cash flow to get through this year and next. And we've allocated the remaining 50% to the general fund to help with COVID-related expenditures. Under the ongoing budget solutions, the bottom 5, I believe, are the latest to be added. All the others you've seen on June 3rd. We're anticipating some savings with respect to our health and welfare premiums. We anticipate that for this current budget year coming up, they'll be worth about $1.2 million. We are adding back in our food and nutrition indirect costs, and we'll see why in a little bit. We have reduced property and liability insurance premiums that we learned about. There's some revisions to our special ed growth numbers based on the amount of vacancies that we have in there. And we learned of some additional low incidence funding related to AB 602. So all of those amounted to about $3.6 million more of ongoing budget solutions added to the $1.3 million of one time. That's about $5 million, which impacts our bottom line moving forward. Next slide, please. So again, just to, as we get close to closing the books, you can see that we're ending the year 2019-2020 about where we predicted $15 million operating deficit. Again, most of that has to do with the carryover that we did not expend in 18-19, and we've expended it this year. So again, about $10 million of that, $10 to $11 million of that is carryover. Once we factor out the net activity, our ending balance as we end the year will be close to $45 million in the general fund, 9.6% reserve level. not quite at our 10% target, but pretty close. Looking forward to next year, again, based on the budget predicated on the May revise, we're looking at $381.8 million of revenues, about $419.8 million of expenditures. Our sources and uses net to about 1.4 million positive. So our net activity again would be a negative $36.6 million, and that would take our ending balance down to $8.2 million, which is about a 1.2 reserve level. So again, up from the 0% we saw last meeting. And again, to reiterate, these numbers do not reflect the district's economic reality in 2021, simply what we have to adopt this evening. Moving forward, next slide, please. This slide just provides some detail reflecting our proposed budget for next year, revenues and expenditures, and then does a comparison year over year. I think probably the only two line items worth highlighting here with respect to accuracy, knowing what's coming, are the certificated salary lines and the classified salary lines. So you'll note a 4% increase in certificated salaries. That has to do with step and column increases, longevity increases, as well as some special ed enrollment growth. And similar with classified salaries. Again, that 5.9% increase reflects the same step and column increase, longevity increases, and additional staffing related to special ed enrollment growth. Next, please. This just separates that combined general fund numbers into unrestricted and restricted. So here's the unrestricted side. Next, please. Here's the restricted side. You can see that we're anticipating ending 2019-20 with some carryover unspent categorical about 1.1 million. And then we'll spend about half of that next year and then have the remaining amount to spend the following year as planned. Next, please. So again, this is just detail of what's left in terms of the reserves at the end of the year in our proposed budget. So this is just a breakdown of the $8.2 million. That would be our ending fund balance. Again, the 8.2 represents a 1.2% reserve level. If this were a budget that we were having to live with, and if we did want to meet the 2% required reserve, we would need to find another $5.5 million of budget solutions to get us to 2%. So having already looked for 12 points and identified 12.7 million, 5.5 would be a Herculean effort to get there. Next slide, please. This is just a historical view of our net activity in our general fund over the past 10 years. You can see we've had some good years and then some not so good years. Those not so good years, for the most part, just reflect carryover expenditures, right? So we've been obviously very prudent in our budgeting, not always expended all of our current year revenues and grants, and often have spent them the year following, which shows as a deficit on this chart. You can see again in 2021, the level of deficit we're looking at under the governor's May revise proposal. Next, please. And again, just showing the board the work we've done and you've done with respect to building up our reserve levels in the general fund. Again, solid reserves in 11-12. Those helped us get through, some recessionary times. Built those back up to 15% in 16-17. And again, those will help us get through the next year or two as well as we struggle with the impacts of the COVID-19 and the recession that we're currently in. Next, please. Turning our attention quickly to our other funds, which we have about 12 of. This slide provides you a high-level review of each, where we estimate ending the current year, the projected revenues for next year in each of these funds, the projected expenditures, in each of these funds, and then where we anticipate finishing next year for each of these funds. The detail, I'll show you my prop here. The detail, of course, is in your SACS report, right, which you all received electronically. There's also some detail in the user-friendly budget book, which you've also received. The only caveat, which I always reference as we're looking at these funds, is Fund 63, you'll recall, has a different accounting treatment. And as such, we have to recognize liabilities as current year expenditures. And that results in us booking $16.4 million of GASB entries that really need to come off the books. So their ending fund balance is really the 12.8, the minus 12.8 plus the 16.4. So that's what, $3.6 million to the good. Next slide, please. I just wanted to take one quick moment to review the COVID-19 impacts on our food and nutrition fund. I'm sorry, next slide, please. There we go. So again, the COVID-19 impacts on our food and nutrition fund. If we just look at the revised budget for 1920, where we thought we would end the year versus where we actually anticipate ending the year, you'll see that, you know, most of the impact was felt in our other local revenues. So while the state and the feds have come forth and come to the table and are reimbursing us for most of the meals that we served to our students during the closure, the impact that we felt mostly were from our a la carte sales, right, in the kitchen, to the tune of about a little less than $2 million. On the expenditure side, we also have reduced our expenditures slightly, in part based on substitute costs that we didn't need, in part on reduced supplies, obviously due to the closure. We also did not, we reversed the indirect fee that the Food and Nutrition Fund was going to reimburse the general fund for this year, again, being sensitive to the cash flow needs of that particular fund. So in the end, we're looking at about $1 million deficit in that fund in the current year, as opposed to a projected deficit of $321,000. The good news is at this point for next year, based on the planning that our reopening committee is doing, we're budgeting for business as usual in this particular fund. Next slide, please. Finally, our last two slides are two multi-year projections. This one, of course, is the one predicated on the governor's May revised proposal that we know will not be a reality, but upon which our budget is based. And so this shows the current budget year 2021 and the two subsequent years. And you can see, as noted here, in order for us to maintain our 2% required reserves, we would have to make $42.5 million of reductions in 21-22 and another $10 million in 22-23. So obviously that's not achievable, and we'll leave it at that for now. Next slide, please. This slide is probably the more important of the two slides. This is what we anticipate the next 3 years looking like based on our understanding of the proposed budget deal. And again, the details are not all released yet, but we're fairly confident that this is a good depiction of what budgets will look like next year based on what we've heard. So next year, we're looking at a slight deficit of a little over $5 million. And then in the out years, because the COLA is not ongoing, we would anticipate slightly higher deficits, and we would recommend some budget reductions as we move forward of $8 million and $7 million, which obviously we'll revisit. This will all be brought back to you again in August when we bring you the revised budget for your consideration and approval. Next slide, please. So as stated, we're recommending that the board adopt the 2021 budgets as presented, and in recognition that we're following the county's guidance and using the May revised assumptions for our preliminary budget in our adopted budget at this point for 2021. I'd be happy to answer any questions, as would Director Ramiro at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Little. I don't think I have a lot of questions, but I do have a lot of comments. So if anybody has questions, let's take those first.
A question?
Ms. Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Little. So given the deficits that we're going to be, or the cuts that are going to be required in these next couple of years, and the fact that the state has implemented, in order to help solve their budget crisis, they've implemented 10% salary cuts for their employees, and many counties and cities are sure to follow suit. Under what circumstances would we be able to freeze the step and column increases to help balance our budget?
That's an excellent question. I don't know that there's any circumstance under which we could freeze step and column. I believe contractually we're required to provide those to our employees. I think we have other options that we could certainly explore prior to, going down that road if we had to. I don't know if Associate Superintendent Jimenez would know any more about step and column and its ability to be frozen or not.
No, and echoing Mr. Little's comments, that's something we would have to look into. I'm not sure if we have that ability.
Thank you. That's the only question I have.
Thank you. Other board members?
I have somewhat of a comment question. It's my understanding that the state isn't letting us furlough or anything with our people. So basically they're cutting our revenues, but not really helping us to cut our expenses. If I do the math correctly, and tell if I'm wrong, that right now we spend about 85% of our budget on people. With the reduction in the revenues, it increases to about 91%. So basically, we're having to try to find $38 million with only 9% left of our budget to do everything else. I find it silly that we have to vote on a budget that's probably not going to be the budget. I think that's just kind of a weird thing. But if this sends a signal to the state that you can't do this, you can't cut our revenues and still not let us be able to make these changes, like Ms. Beatty pointed out, if we can't make adjustments in personnel, which we don't want to do, but would have to do, it's very frustrating. So thank you.
I share your frustration. I would comment that, from the state's perspective, in the proposed budget deal, revenues are not decreasing, right? So our revenues next year will be at the same level they are this year, plus we'll get a little bit more for some COVID-19 relief. And remember that salaries are a percentage of total expenditures, not revenues. So that number doesn't fluctuate based on revenues, only on what you spend in total.
To tack on to what Ms. Couvret said, I wish our representatives in Sacramento understood better how their budgeting deadlines, how the deadlines they've imposed upon us, the school districts, make their foot dragging up in Sacramento really unconscionable. You've presented, your team has done a lot of work here, and it was all for nothing because really only 16 of your presentation is valid. I mean, maybe some of the additional funds, but the general fund, only page 16 of this presentation is real. And if this were the budget that the legislature is going to adopt likely tomorrow, I would have to vote no today. But I know that these are not real numbers. Sacramento luckily recognized the impossibility of requiring schools to respond to a pandemic with 10% less funding. So we have those much rosier numbers. Slide 16 looks pretty darn good, much less bad at least than we were expecting. But that it is too late for us to approve real numbers tonight is really telling. And that's an issue with Sacramento, not with us. We're doing what they tell us we have to do. And we only have to adopt it's a fake budget. And we have to do it because that's what they told us to do. We'll approve a real budget in August when we return. I understand that, but that budget looks much better. We're going to maintain a reserve that will help us through more than 1 year of economic downturn. Lets us have control over where we cut rather than having to cut everything indiscriminately with 40 million or whatever the number was just now. A couple of important things, I should give credit where credit is due. There's not everything in here is not garbage. Inaccurate general fund budget, yes, but we are approving other fund budgets that are mostly unaffected by the new state numbers, if I understand, though they were affected somewhat by COVID-19. And second, and I think the most important thing in here is that we're approving strategic general fund budget cuts of 12.7 million. Some of those are going to be ongoing, and they're going to address by more than half, if I read those numbers right, our structural budget deficit. Those cuts are going to allow us, if I read slide 16, the only valid slide here, only 5 million of our reserves next year to balance our budget, rather than 36 million. So with that, I am pleased. We find ourselves voting here on something that's not real, using old, invalid numbers. I'm unhappy about that, but I'm gonna feel free to vote yes for it because I know they're not real, and I trust that our public at this point understands that they're not real. Dr. Patel?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and then some comments also. This budget doesn't include any potential of FEMA money or HEROES money, should that come to fruition? Is that correct?
That's correct. We did not include any assumptions around those additional revenues.
But the slide 16 budget does include some assumption around HEROES or whatever HEROES turns out to be.
We did not include any of the federal HEROES dollars, only what we knew we were getting already in hand.
Okay, so I would like to comment that I'm very pleased to see that we were able to come up with a kind of budget that didn't even threaten cuts to staff. And I know that that's also what the legislature is asking us to do. So thank you for the hard work in coming up with those 12 million in savings that are just around our all other non-personnel related items. I was impressed that you were able to even do that. That's very good. And I'm thankful that you did present this slide 16. I know when we went through the budget earlier in the week, we had no idea what this would look like. So I'm glad to see that that's in there. Could we get...
Patel, I also want to just respectfully say that was a team effort. I don't want to disrespect what all of our departments did. It was a team effort in really looking at all of our areas within the district of how we can keep cuts farthest away from our staff and our programs that impact kids. And so I just want to reemphasize that.
Thank you for that, because that is important to state. I can see clearly that it was a team effort, and thank you for clarifying that. If we had to get that additional 5 million, could we do it without touching staff? Is it even possible?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then the last question is dipping below that 2%. I know we mentioned this last month. That is permitted by the county at this point.
Yes, for this year, they've waived the 2% required reserve, or actually the required reserve in general. Ours is 2%, but they've waived that requirement given where all districts are and where we anticipate being with the May revised budget next year.
Okay, so even though we have to pass this kind of placeholder budget, knowing that there's going to be a slightly better budget coming our way in August, we are legally okay to pass this budget. Okay,
that's correct.
Any other comments from the board? Ms. Eggins, I noticed your lights are going out on you over there. I wasn't sure if you were trying to get the lights turned on or had a comment.
Yeah, it's the lights, but I would like to comment as well. Thank you for all your hard work. I know it's a team effort, and despite it not being the most accurate budget, but it was very specific, and I think the public was very appreciative of seeing these numbers, even if they weren't the real numbers. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Ms. Beatty, you're the only one who hadn't said anything. You good?
Actually, I was the first one to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you were. You asked questions. Yes. Well, I guess at this point then, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. On a motion by Ms. Beatty, second by Dr. Patel. And I believe, Ms. Aiken, you don't have a vote because there's personnel involved in this one. So, board members only, all in favor?
Aye.
That looks unanimous, 4-0. Thank everyone for the hard work here. And Mr. Little, I appreciate that you couldn't really change this whole thing and get it published in time with the new real numbers. And thank you. It's frustrating, but thank you.
And thank you to Director Ramiro and her team as well for all their hard work.
Absolutely. And I know they were trying to decide if they could get the numbers in time. And I know they were planning to come in over the weekend if the new numbers came in on Friday. So I appreciate that commitment, that willingness to work with Sacramento's non-deadlines. So thank you very much for your work. And we look forward to seeing the real numbers come August. That takes us to 7.2, approval of resolution number 112-2020 entitled Authorization to Identify the Amount of Budget Reduction Solutions Needed in the 2021-22 and 22-23, and to require that a list of budget reductions solutions for 2021-22 be included in the 2020-21 first interim report. Let's throw in a few more years. I like it. All right, Mr. Little.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Well, as part of the San Diego County Office of Education requirements pursuant to Ed Code 42127, if a district adopts a budget and needs to make budget reductions or solutions in the subsequent 2 years to maintain reserve levels, the board must adopt a resolution identifying the amount of those solutions or reductions needed in each of those subsequent years. So as we just saw in this May revised based adopted budget, we would need $42.5 million of reductions in 21-22 and another 10 the following year to maintain our 2% required reserve. So this is just identifying that number as per that budget, but given that we know the budget is not real, this is sort of a pro forma exercise as well.
I'll make a motion to approve. If there are no questions.
Actually, I have a question.
All right.
So by passing this resolution, is the board delegating its responsibility to determine the specific cuts if the larger number would come to pass, or would the board still have the power and authority to approve the specific cuts?
Yes, we would expect that the board would certainly approve the specific cuts, and we would have to identify those if they were to come to pass by first interim. So if we were looking at whatever level reductions, 40 million, we would have to identify 40 million worth of reduction by the end of December, actually by mid-December, and then bring those to you at our first interim presentation for you to approve along with the first interim budget.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
So with that, we had a motion by Dr. Patel. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Couvret. Any discussion before we move through it? No? Okay, this one, Ms. Agins, you do have a vote.
Aye.
Thank you. And everyone else, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
8.1 is the readmission of students on expulsion. Ms. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, we bring forward 5 readmissions for students on expulsion. The students have met the conditions of their contract to be eligible for readmission.
I believe we need to go through one case at a time and vote on each one of those. So is there a motion on case number 2019-2020-02 or 0.02? Motion by Ms. Couvret, second by Dr. Patel to readmit this student. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's 4-0. Thank you. Case number 2019-2020.03. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Couvret, second by Dr. Patel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous, 4-0. Case number 2019-2020.07. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Couvret, second by Dr. Patel. All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Case number 2019-2020.09. Is there a motion? Ms. Couvret, is there a second? Ms. Beatty?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. And the final one, case number 2019-2020.13. Is there a motion? Ms. Couvret, and a second by Dr. Patel. All in favor?
Aye.
That's 4-0. Thank you. All those students are readmitted to Poway Unified. Thank you. Those are good ones. Item 8.2, approval of the 2020-2021 reopening plan. Ms. Osborne.
Thank you. This is also a presentation, so thank you. Tonight I will be presenting the reopening plan for Poway Unified for your approval. I would like to thank all department staff, especially LSS and Tech and Innovation teams, for the collaborative efforts to develop this plan, as well as representative parents, PFT, and PSCA for their input.
Ms. Osborne, may I interrupt for just a second? I just wanted to make President O'Connor Ratcliffe aware that we do have public comments on this item as well.
I think we should probably take the public comment before the presentation, since that's what we did back on the budget item. So if that's all right, Ms. Osborne, we'll take the public comments first. Thank you, Ms. Peck.
Absolutely.
When you're ready.
Apologies, Ms. Osborne. First comment on item 8.2 is from Jennifer Greenhall of San Diego. I'm concerned that PUSD is not pursuing a hybrid online in-person learning experience for the 2020-21 school year. San Diego County's infection rate is at an all-time high, 332 new cases on 6/23/20, and tied for the highest percentage of positive tests thus far at 5%. Both numbers are much higher than when school was shuttered in March. There's still no effective treatment in sight, and we'll be extremely lucky if San Diego County starts receiving vaccines for the general population in late 2020 or even early 2021. We cannot return to business as usual with full classrooms, lack of masks, and lack of social distancing. However, for their mental, social, and academic health, our children need more than just online learning. It was a stopgap measure. You've had months to figure out a better solution and still have 2 more months to finalize your plan. I have faith you can do it. If you need more funding to make this work, present a detailed plan with a budget and solicit the community for help. Even at this moment, San Diego schools should be expected to mandate mask wearing, instill physically distanced learning, and limit time at school to both obviate the need for eating while around peers, to limit time in potentially infectious restrooms, and to minimize overall exposure and time the kids must wear masks. Effecting a plan like this will likely require having only a portion of students at school at a time, which will mean that some sort of hybrid model with online supplements will have to take place. Our children need socialization for their mental health, but school as normal will likely not be allowed by the government. Hence, if you're presenting school as normal versus online learning as our 2 options, you're really only presenting the choice of online learning, which 84% of parents rejected. You must be prepared for the rules you will likely have to follow to make in-person learning a reality, and need to implement as safe of a plan as possible that will provide some in-person time at school. Cathedral Catholic High School will be implementing an on-campus online hybrid learning model. PUSD can rise to this challenge as well. Be creative. San Diego is fortunate in that its schools can use many outdoor spaces for teaching. Think outside the box. Our children are depending on you. Next comment is from Danielle Alphin, Poway. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Phelps, Ms. Osborne, and district staff. As in previous appeals via public comment in May and multiple subsequent emails, I'm writing to advocate for bold and courageous leadership in reopening our schools. I understand that the plan to offer both on-campus learning and distance learning is most feasible and efficient for our district. I appreciate that a distance learning option is being offered for those whose health risks require it, and for those who simply prefer it right now. Thank you for offering your constituents choices. My focus this evening is the on-campus option. The appeal I make to you again tonight is to maximize the positive academic, social, and emotional impact of school for students returning to campus in the fall. While it is necessary to implement some new protocols to mitigate the risks of COVID-19, please do not succumb to the fear-mongering. You must instead focus on the facts. San Diego County is currently reporting a total of 11,626 SARS-CoV-2 cases out of over 3.3 million residents. That is less than 1% of our county population. For further perspective, consider the 97% recovery and survival rate. For residents under age 70, over 99% are recovering and surviving. For those ages 0 to 19, the population our district is charged with serving, the survival rate is 100%. Furthermore, evidence is mounting that children may be less susceptible to the virus and less likely to transmit it. The evidence also strongly suggests that children who do contract the virus are likely to either be asymptomatic or have only mild symptoms. With all that scientific data in mind, please consider a reasonable approach to creating safe environments at school. Schools and districts have been granted permission to welcome students back on campus with the expectation you will comply with the California Department of Public Health's COVID-19 industry guidance. The CDPH actually encourages you to tailor the implementation of this guidance to meet the needs of students and families, to consider the extent to which the recommendations are practicable, and to minimize and mitigate any negative or unintended consequences of the suggested health and safety measures. You have the power to implement common sense measures to promote healthy hygiene practices, such as washing hands, avoiding contact with the face, and covering coughs and sneezes to intensify cleaning, disinfection, and ventilation. And you have the authority to determine to what extent more invasive measures, such as small group cohorting, strict management of groups in outdoor settings, use of face coverings, etc., can be practically implemented without negatively impacting the academic, social, and emotional development of our students. Our students have suffered enough. You must now do everything in your power to welcome our students back to inviting, engaging, and encouraging school campuses. You must make thoughtful plans to mitigate risk without compromising the school experience. We are counting on you to make smart, data-driven, and student-centered decisions. Next is Stephanie Solins, Poway. I'm writing tonight regarding our district's reopening plan for the fall. I appreciate the district's willingness to offer various models to fit the needs of all of our students. I am speaking to the in-person option tonight. I strongly encourage you to be a leader among districts in our state when it comes to reopening, and not merely following suit of others. Let the data guide you. The population we serve, 0 to 19, has 100% survival rate in our county, and more research is also indicating that not only is it unlikely for children to get, but they are not the super spreaders we once feared. While we need to listen to medical advice and guidelines given by the state, you are the experts in how children learn and develop best. It is your job to, yes, consider their medical safety, but also their emotional and academic well-being. Our students have suffered enough for a virus that was never a legitimate threat to them. Please be mindful of the environment you're sending our students back to. I ask you to cautiously consider state guidelines and, of course, implement changes that make sense. For example, increase hand washing and desanitize spaces more frequently. Masks, learning in isolation, eating alone, no playing outside together is a debilitating environment, and our children deserve better. Next is Laura Lund, San Diego. Blended learning was our first or second choice for each survey response we filled out, depending on the child. The survey was not worded to allow for nuanced input. If it's safe was a qualifier for in-classroom instruction. It is not safe, and I urge the board to explore hybrid learning options. I believe we can balance children's needs with public health via a blended learning approach. The last comment is from Karen Harkins Slocum, Poway. The board is being asked to take action tonight on the district's 2020-21 reopening plan. All that is clear from this agenda item is that there will be 2 models and that parents will be required to pick one of the models for their students. But there's so much unknown. Perhaps you have already received the details. Parents like me have not. Or perhaps you're merely voting to approve the 2-model approach. Whatever you do, I hope that you will hold our district accountable for being honest and transparent in its plans. Rumors abound. For example, the agenda item says that staff is working on considerations to ensure campuses provide a healthy and safe environment for staff and students. But I have heard, to put it bluntly, that the district administration's position is that guidelines are just guidelines and there will not necessarily be an attempt to follow them. If it's true, that's appalling. And if true, if the district will not actually be at least attempt to follow the recommendations and guidelines, parents should have that information when selecting a schooling option for the upcoming school year. Specifically, will the district require school sites to follow the cleaning and disinfecting guidance for high-touch areas? Will the district constrain the number of students on campuses at one time? Will the district require non-exempt students to wear face masks as required in other California settings? Will the district comply with social distancing guidelines by limiting the number of students in classrooms to ensure sufficient space for social distancing? Will the district use enhanced ventilation to reduce the risk of spreading the virus throughout an entire pod of classrooms, or hold classes outdoors when the weather permits? I recognize the district is operating with limited resources and the situation is fluid, but let's be honest about what the district will and will not do so that parents can truly make informed decisions. That concludes the public comments for this item.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peck. And now we'll let Ms. Osborne take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam President. All right. Next slide, please. Teamwork is the ability to work together toward a common vision, the ability to direct individual accomplishments toward organizational objectives. It is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. Teamwork has been at the center of developing this plan with constant focus on our district vision and mission to guide the learning models for our students. These core values have guided our work. Follow the California Department of Public Health guidelines, maintain an inclusive and caring and supportive school culture, and we will be establishing protocols to support health and safety of our students and staff. And we will ensure that all stakeholders are informed throughout the coming days. This document has evolved over the past month and been revised based on changing guidelines, input from family and staff, surveys, and reviewed by representative parents. If approved by you tonight, we will post this plan on the website and ensure all parents, families, and staff have access. We will be providing guidance to our principals as they develop their site-specific logistical plans, and we will continue to update the reopening plan based on the California Department of Public Health and county public health orders. Our ultimate goal is to ensure our schools open safely and continue to provide a healthy learning environment for each and every student. This timeline provides a bit more specific detail. We started the process with input from our parents and families through the initial parent survey and surveys on distance learning from all stakeholders. This information has informed planning for improving our virtual learning plans. Currently, our custodial crews are working to deep clean and prepare our campuses for welcoming students back in August. We will continue to plan and collaborate with teachers that will be taking on new roles as virtual teachers in August to ensure they feel confident with tools, resources, and online pedagogy. It will be critical that we continue to monitor the California Department of Public Health and local directives to update plans through the summer to ensure the opening of schools provides a safe and healthy environment for students and staff. We will have a dedicated webpage to provide updates through July and August. Our reopening focus will support our district vision of creating culture and conditions to empower world-class learners. Our efforts to increase the level of critical thinking and engagement for students will continue in all settings. We will also be continuing efforts to integrate more culturally relevant curriculum within and across grade levels to ensure diverse perspectives are included in literature and history. One of the greatest concerns during school closures has been the impact on students' social emotional well-being. We will amplify our efforts to ensure students feel connected, valued, and have opportunities to learn collaboratively. Our students with unique learning needs, as well as with IEPs, 504s, and English learners, will continue to be provided with the necessary differentiated supports to foster their individual success. While we may need to limit parents' physical presence on campus, our goal will be to continue to partner with parents for their child's education. We are offering 2 learning options for 2020-21 school year. on campus, or online virtual learning. On-campus learning will provide daily in-class instruction with safety protocols in place that I will expand upon shortly. As I just mentioned, our focus on rigor, differentiation, and supports will be at the core of student learning. We also want to build on some of the learning experiences that our teachers and students utilized during distance learning that included the intentional use of technology to engage and individualize student learning. The online virtual learning option will be more aligned to a regular structured day for students. We have reviewed input from students, staff, and parents regarding distance learning, as well as best practices for online learning to develop our virtual learning academy. Dedicated time with their classroom teacher, high-quality learning tasks that are aligned to course requirements, opportunities to collaborate with peers, differentiated learning support for students with diverse learning needs, as well as individual support and outreach through office hours will be provided in the virtual learning model. Attendance will be required and students will return to traditional grades and progress reports. The virtual learning option will be significantly different from distance learning that was provided during the past 3 months. Distance learning was developed quickly in response to the emergency closing of schools. The input from students, families, and teachers has informed dramatic changes to the online learning option we will be offering in August. Virtual learning will include multiple contacts with the teachers each day, a structured learning day, access to their regular classroom materials, one learning platform, daily attendance, return to grades, and progress reports. We know our students have been impacted by the isolation of being at home, and we are preparing to ensure both learning options include morning meetings, personal connections, social emotional lessons, and small group supports for students so they feel connected and engaged. Ensuring students have opportunities to exercise, play, and engage in PE will be incorporated into both learning models as well. On-campus outdoor learning spaces will be utilized as possible to support health and safety. Virtual learning will have specific PE classes for all students. PUSD will take essential actions to create a physical environment that promotes student and staff safety through established protocols and procedures. These protocols include disinfecting and cleaning areas throughout the day. We have purchased electrostatic sprayers that will support the cleaning of all surfaces thoroughly and efficiently daily. During the day, high-touch areas will be sanitized. PUSD will follow the California Department of Public Health guidelines and continue to collaborate with the San Diego County Public Health Agency for current guidelines on health measures. At this time, temperature checks are required. Touchless thermometers have been purchased and site-specific plans will include specific entry points for students and temperature checks. If a student or staff member has a temperature over 100 degrees, they will not be allowed onto campus. If someone exhibits symptoms during the day, we will establish a separate area for them to wait to be picked up or send the staff member home. We will encourage physical distancing throughout the day as possible. Schedules will be developed to reduce numbers of students in the common areas during breaks, lunches, and reduce large gatherings. An example would be at elementary. Typically, all primary students, first, second, and third grade, have a common recess. These will be adjusted to include one grade level at a time or separate play areas such as some kids on the blacktop and other kids on the field for specific grade levels. At middle and high school, designating areas for students during breaks will reduce large groups from gathering. We will be providing schools with decals to indicate spacing for any area where students may line up, such as the lunch area, to support physical distancing. Classrooms will utilize space by spreading desks and tables around the room, as well as using vacant classrooms and outdoor space as available. We may have some vacant classrooms due to some families choosing online learning. Class sizes may be a bit smaller, but we may also have up to the regular size of 26 to 30 students in a class. At this time, the California Department of Public Health and San Diego orders indicate all staff wear face coverings, masks, or face shields. We will provide masks to staff and students. We are asking staff and students to wear their face coverings for the increased safety and protection of themselves and others. Hygiene practices will be reviewed regularly with students. We are adding hand sanitizer stations to high traffic areas on all campuses. 6 hand sanitizer stations for each elementary school, 10 at each middle school, and 15 for each high school. Changes will be made to eliminate sharing of instructional materials such as markers, pencils, and manipulatives. Personal protective equipment will be available for staff. Disinfecting buses and implementing protocols will ensure the health and safety of students that utilize district transportation. The AC will be on, or windows or roof ventilation will be open to maximize ventilation during transport. All buses have 1 or 2 large roof ventilation hatches, which allow for air to be scooped in from the back and vacuumed out from the rear roof hatch, or open windows in the back to keep it circulating. Next slide. Staggered lunch times will be developed through the site-specific logistical planning. Hand sanitizer stations will be located near food service areas to support personal hygiene. Students participating in the virtual learning model can pick up lunches at school, and regular meal prices will apply as we reopen schools. We will continue to communicate regularly with our families and students for prevention and awareness of the health and safety protocols. We will have a dedicated webpage to provide this plan, as well as sample virtual learning schedules and frequently asked questions for parents and teachers. These are some key dates and events that will provide information to our families and staff. Our goal is to ensure families have all the information they need to make an informed choice and commitment for the learning model that will best support their children. We will be asking parents to commit for the year to a learning model. Changes may be made on a case-by-case basis if necessary. However, options may be limited. High schools may allow greater flexibility to change from virtual to on-campus based on the high school structure and changing of schedules at the quarter or trimester. However, elementary and middle schools may be more challenging due to classes being filled and seats not available at a family's home school. Again, we'll work on a case-by-case basis to support our families. And now I will open it up to questions. Thank you.
Dr. Patel, I see you waving.
Yes. I will ask one question first and let other board members have a chance, because I know there are probably a lot of questions and I want to make sure everyone gets turns. Can you please explain for our community how the district arrived at eliminating the hybrid model as an option?
When looking at trying to provide 3 models or a hybrid model, thinking about the number of staff that we had and the number of staff that were requesting that they also had health concerns and needs, the concern would be we may need to hire additional teachers to have reduced number of kids on campus and support virtual learning. And so it was not feasible for us to be able to do that with the existing staff, being able to have custodians clean staff if we went to a midday schedule where we have kids come in the morning, the afternoon. There was just not enough staff to be able to implement some of those models in a district our size.
In addition to that, I just want to add too, that when you calculate the number of instructional minutes that's going to be required to meet the educational needs of all of our students, especially in our larger high schools, to go through a hybrid model would not allow us to meet their educational needs, and they would not meet the minimum requirement by the end of the school year. And so what was calculated was that in order to do a hybrid model, children then would only be exposed to be on campus once a week or once every 2 weeks. And so that wouldn't be adequate enough for them to be able to receive the amount of content that they would need for each of their courses.
Are there other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Ms. Osborne, can you just again review sort of the highlights of what the virtual learning program will look like? I think that's important because that's really brand new and very different, more different than what we currently have.
Yes, when we created distance learning, we knew that it was an emergency situation. So we had teachers that needed a great deal of learning and support around using new tools and their comfort level with being online, as well as dealing with health and wellness of their own families. So the virtual learning academy that we have developed is similar to what best practice is for online learning, so that students start with their teacher during the day. We have a regular bell schedule for students that they would be following with their teacher, so that there would be time almost each hour that there would be some time with the teacher and then time for kids to do some work and then come back and have some time with the teacher. An elementary lesson would be perhaps some reading time, some independent reading and work, then come back and have a writing lesson, some independent time, lunch breaks, recess breaks, and then having face-to-face time for math instruction and small group instruction during the day. So many more touch points and contact with the teacher online than when we were providing during distance learning.
And would there also be, say, arts? We've got social studies, the arts programs, and physical education. Have we a plan for those?
Yes, that's what we were looking at, is how we would be, because we've now done many pickups and drop-off systems through the last 3 months, we would have structured times and schedules for families to pick up art supplies and materials so that their students would be able to engage in the art classes. They would be able to have their textbooks and their materials at home. And we could even arrange to have library books checked out as needed, so that we would be able to ensure that the kids have their materials at home much more than we did during this distance learning period that was the beginning of May, where we started to let some kids come and get additional instructional materials and packets and things that they typically use in the classroom. We would be organizing that so there would be pickup. If they come to school to pick up their lunch, they might be able to be picking up packets for the next week or materials, their benchmark readers for the next unit, and so on.
Final question. You said that this sort of mirrored the online academies that currently exist. So did you look at some of the ones that are well reputed or considered successful ones in order to come up with this?
Yes, we did, and in fact, some of our principals and families have other family members in some of the private schools, and there was a similarity of a lot of assigned work during that time. But we've looked at some of our neighboring charter schools that have online learning. We feel that our online academy will be leveraging the strength and quality of our teachers and using Zoom much differently than most online learning, which may have limited contact with teachers. That was one of the biggest concerns that we heard from both students and parents, is they wanted more contact time with the teachers. And so ensuring that that is built in not only each day, but throughout the day, so that we are trying to provide much more face-to-face and support from the teacher and direct instruction for our students.
Thank you.
Dakins?
We might have touched on this, but I just wanted to clarify. I know that there's a concern with student connection with teachers, but I was wondering if there was going to be like some online kind of database for counselors for the emotional and social wellness of students, because I know that that's going to be a hard transition back into school with everything. So I was wondering if that would be an opportunity.
Yes, absolutely, because that's one of our greatest concerns is ensuring that our students have the social and emotional support. So thinking about, depends on our numbers and how we organize our staff to be able to support the students in the virtual learning academy. We would look at that and then need to think about, all right, so how do we assign, what's the number of counselors we would need to assign to the virtual learning academy so that the students would have that direct access to a counselor, as well as the student support specialist or student support assistants at the elementary, because we know that having folks that are in the counseling world, they have that expertise to be able to push into classrooms, meet small group and individually. So we would be assigning that specialized staff based on the numbers that we have allocated for the virtual academy and making some of those adjustments.
Okay. And also touching on Dr. Phelps' point, for the hybrid model for the high school, since if we did it, it would really, it wouldn't really align with the curriculum. Is there something else that we're trying to plan to kind of have that hybrid model available for high school? We also have to compensate for the educational gaps that are happening because of the pandemic as well. So is there going to be a new model that's hybrid for high schoolers, or is it just kind of not really in the picture right now because it's too complicated?
No, we're really looking at one of the considerations for that very purpose is we know we have kids who have fallen behind. So we know we have schools on the 4x4, the quarter, we have also trimester. The virtual learning for high schools will be the 4x4 model because we know that model affords students more opportunities to take additional classes and catch up and fill in where they may have gaps by taking additional courses during the year. So we felt that model was going to best serve our students.
Thank you. I know Master's happy about that, so thank you.
To piggyback on that, I know with the hybrid model, or with the 4x4 schedule, I know my high school daughter's at Westview, and compared to what some of her friends she has through gymnastics and dance throughout the district, it was much easier for her to manage online, just communicating with 4 different teachers at a time, rather than what some of her friends across the district were having to go through with even more than that. So I am happy to hear that the virtual academy is using the 4x4 model. Sorry, Ginger, you had a question. Go ahead, yes.
I wanted to mention, so first off, I commend your staff because 6 months ago, you never would have thought you'd be having to change education the way you are. And it's amazing. And I'm a glass half full and I'll talk about it later, but it is an opportunity, I think, to try to change education as we have it. But I also know that you're completely at the whim of our governor and the county. And I'm just kind of wondering I truly love the 2 models. I think it's definitely a great way to go. But if all of a sudden we have to close down again, is there a plan to take those kids and move them onto the online academy?
Yeah, that's part of our discussion and planning is that we know that we may, if a school needs to close down, we may need to do some adaptation. So we will be working to ensure that we have awareness for all of our teachers of what that virtual learning academy structure and curriculum looks like and how it's being used. The collaboration among and between teachers is something that we are also holding at center because we know the virtual learning teachers will need to have that support from their colleagues that are teaching the virtual academy. And we're going to want to have opportunities that on certain maybe time banking days or late start days, that we can also have some of that cross-pollination between our virtual learning teachers and our on-campus teachers so that we are helping to learn some of these best practices and building that capacity so that we are prepared if come flu season that we have spikes that we need to address, certain schools or areas that need maybe closed down.
So it sounds like, go ahead if you have additional questions.
I just have one logistic question. So say half the kids at Poway High come back, that's 1,000 kids. How can we temperature them? I mean, I'm just trying to think logistically. Right. That's a feat every day. And just curious.
Yes. Well, the good news is our ESS program has started and we have, I think, 1,400 students in our ESS program right now. And they were sharing that in the first week, it was slow and took some time as everyone got used to the protocol with the wellness checks and the temperature checks. Now in the second week, less than 15 seconds per child to take that temperature, because now kids know the protocol, and these are little kids. They know the protocol, parents know the protocol, and so it is much more efficient. So that's exactly what I would expect as well, is that the first few days and perhaps that first week is going to take some time for us to understand. I would also, part of the site logistical plans will be perhaps that they organize by alpha, and certain kids come in this entrance, certain kids come in this entrance, and certain kids come in this entrance, so that we are dividing and conquering by looking at the numbers of our students coming on campus and how do we utilize the entry points on our campus so that we can have a smooth flow.
Thank you.
I would purchase multiple thermometers for each campus. So we will have multiple staff members around taking temperatures. So there's not just one person in one entrance. And then we are also looking at potential options of for our high schools, especially in our middle schools, the larger schools, my lights just went off, that we are looking at those temperature scanning machines that they have like at airports, that so that people would just walk through it and it is a quicker, faster method.
I have a question here that is it possible really that our in-person learning models really are kind of likely to turn into hybrid? I'm wondering if one student in one class has a temperature, or if one student in one class has a parent who is diagnosed with COVID. At that point, are we relying on county health guidelines about whether we have to shut down that one class or the whole school? And are we going to be ready to send all those kids home and teachers home and staff in general to pivot rapidly into this virtual academy? Do we have a plan for that? And are we relying on county health and state health to tell us when we have to do that?
No, we're still working on that plan, but we're reliant on we're still waiting for guidelines from the county and the California Department of Health as well as CDE to determine where that pivot point is and what is the criteria for us to make those steps and take those measures.
Okay. Another logistical question. Say we have, let's say, a yearbook class. There's one offered in the whole school, and the students who are in that class have already been selected at the end of this year. Let's say 2/3 of those students are on campus learners and 1/3 of those students are virtual academy students. How does that work? Will that work?
So that's one of the challenges that we've been discussing as well. And something like band, if you have kids and one band teacher, we have talked about how maybe the kids at home are able to be zoomed into that classroom so that they are able to participate with that 5th grade band teacher or middle school band teacher, high school.
So that's the scheduling that you're talking about, more of a rigid schedule then.
Correct.
Okay.
The yearbook one might take us a little bit more time to work around, but what I have found during this time is more brains working on these problems as they come up, better solutions.
We can do it.
Today we met with teachers at each level, and my team came back and said, I think we're going to have a lot more teachers possibly than we need for the virtual. They really like that schedule. But I do think that our teachers and those that are on the ground level will be able to help us figure out what's possible, because that question came up around, what if we have one Spanish teacher?
Yes, same situation.
That's the other thing we've talked about, is because we may need to have flexibility with staffing. So if we have one middle school Spanish teacher is supporting the virtual students, and then one on-campus Spanish teacher, we may need to have flexibility where the Spanish teacher travels.
So you can imagine how many very specific situations there are that we have to look at. And you can imagine how complex it is amongst 3 different levels of school and 39 different school campuses. And every parent has a different scenario for their child. And every parent wants a different model for their child. And so you can imagine, even if we had the hybrid model in there, how managing that logistically would just be near to impossible for any principal to manage on a site. Because if you're looking at the hybrid model being instituted because there's a health concern, then bringing them on campus kind of negates that whole argument, right? Because you're bringing it on campus and then you're exposing other kids and that child is now being exposed. So the hybrid model really doesn't work. Utilizing having the kids either choosing the virtual learning and or being on campus, the kids that are on virtual, it allows us to use those vacant spaces to lessen the class sizes and allow for more social distancing for the kids that are choosing to be on the on-campus experience. And so having the hybrid only further complicates it. Not only does it not meet their educational needs, but it doesn't allow us to give us the logistical space needed in order to meet the educational needs and the safety needs of all of our kids.
I'm not asking about the hybrid model for this. I'm just picturing another one occurs to me, our language immersion classes. Woo! How about FLES? Oh my gosh, they're everywhere. One last question though I have. At the California Suburban School Districts meeting, was that yesterday or 2 days ago? It feels like time is moving slowly. One of the experts suggested that a completely virtual learning model for students with IEPs would be it wouldn't be providing least restrictive environment, and that we might run into trouble if parents tried to choose that model for their students with disabilities. Have we considered that? Are we talking to people about that? Because that surprised me.
Well, I'm going to defer to Mr. Mizell, but we will be having appointments and they may be online, but there may need to be some services distance that, but I'll turn it over to Greg and let him address that.
Well, you're doing great, Carol. You're killing it tonight. No, seriously. I would say with this, it's we're gonna do what we can to provide services as creatively as we can to ensure that our students receive the full educational benefit possible under the conditions we're navigating. And as we all know, this space is live, it's dynamic and subject to change quickly. So we're ready for students to return, and we will be ready for those students that opt to learn virtually. And with ESY, we actually are playing in a kind of a hybrid. So our staff is they're phenomenal. Our team, they really are. And I think like Carol's, like Jennifer's, like the whole group here, we've all been leaning into this challenge very hard. And I think we're making rapid progress. We've learned a lot March to June. And while there's still a lot unknown as it relates to August, I'm just going to say this is funny coming to the end of a school year. We're not even at the end yet. And I'm already starting to feel excited about August. Like I just think there's more learning ahead. And I think this challenge is going to grow us in ways that in the moment we might not choose and may not be comfortable, but in the long run may help change mindset, may help improve student outcomes. Like I'm very hopeful. So.
Thank you. So tonight we're looking for a motion that the board.
I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
My other questions were answered. My last question is regarding sports. So depending on what CIF says, of course, at the end of July, they've made an announcement that they're going to have some guidance at the end of July. Will our students that are in the online academy have the same opportunities to try out for sports and participate in sports?
Or really, can we extend this to any extracurricular?
Yes, any extracurricular. Yes, has been part of our conversation, is that would be, they would still be part of their, assigned to their home school in that virtual, but they would be able to engage in the extracurricular activities from their site.
Potentially in person?
That's their choice. Yes. Sports are typically, yes.
It would be optional.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe with the performing arts, it could be a virtual option, but sports maybe.
That's correct.
Got to be present to throw the ball through the hoop.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not saying we have to end questions here yet, but I do want to just clarify that tonight the board is being asked to approve that we will do 2 learning models, an on-campus one with health and safety protocols based on our state and county guidelines, whatever they may be, come August and as they evolve over time, and a fully virtual model. That's the motion. That's what you're looking for. Okay, thank you. So before I call for a motion that sounds something like that, is there more discussion, more questions? Jump in, because there are a lot of people on this screen. I might not see you. We're ready? Okay, I think I just stated what staff is hoping our motion sounds like. So if you agree with that, you can just let me know, or you can try to rephrase it.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Couvrette. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So on a motion by Ms. Couvrette, a second by Dr. Patel. Any more discussion? We have a preferential vote by Ms. Akins.
Aye.
Thank you. And for everyone else, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is unanimous. Thank you. The details. Can't wait to see it. At this time, I'm going to call a brief. Let's make it 5 minutes or less recess. And we will be back.
So are we back on? Are we live?
No idea. Jennifer, are we live?
I think we might have taken a pause, and so I believe we would still be.
Thank you. Well, welcome back. We are on item 8.3, approval of the Poway Unified School District COVID-19 Operations Written Report, the OWR, for 2019-2020. Ms. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam President. Executive Order N56-20 established the requirement that districts adopt a written report explaining to the community the changes to program offerings made in response to school closures and the major impacts of the closures on students and families. At the June 3rd board meeting, we presented the Poway COVID-19 Operations Written Report for 2019-20 as a first reading. Tonight, we bring the report forward for your approval.
Thank you. So we have seen this. This is the second month. Are there any questions for Ms. Osborne? No? With that, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Couvret, second by Dr. Patel. Thank you. Are there any discussion before we vote? And Ms. Akins has a preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye from Ms. Akins, and everybody else, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we moved spots on the screen. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thanks very much. This brings us to 8.4. Approval of resolution number 116-2020 entitled Affirming Poway Unified School District's Commitment to Fight Racism and Correct Systemic Inequity. Ms. Osborne.
Madam President, I do have a significant number of public comments for this item.
Okay, as per our board policy, each comment can be no longer than 3 minutes long. And Ms. Couvret, are you timing that?
I am.
And Dr. Phelps is going to time total comments up to 15 minutes. Thank you. All right, begin.
Thank you. Comments for agenda item 8.4, anti-racism resolution. First comment is from Courtney Ransom, San Diego. Thank you for making this much needed statement and proposed action for racism in our school district. As a proud product of the PUSD system and recent SDSU graduate, I do expect more. I hope you'll deeply consider providing and enforcing a timeline with detailed, quantifiable actions. I understand the formality of a resolution and also ask you to consider following it up with a policy change or addition. You have the power to change the lives of countless students who grew up without gaining true cultural competency in PUSD, just like me. Please take meaningful action. Next is Mackenzie Hemming, Poway. I appreciate the attempt at a resolution for PUSD, but I would like to see specifics. Please provide a clear timeline of goals, plan for resource allocation, research strategy for implementation. As a former student at PUSD, I am invested in seeing change through real anti-racist actions. Next is Kylie Kim, San Diego. I appreciate the sentiment and intent of this resolution, but I would like to see specific plans. It often becomes easy to have good intent behind a resolution before that momentum to become lost. So many students have shared stories of discomfort and blatant disrespect during their time at PUSD, and no student should feel unsafe and threatened being at school. Please provide a clear timeline of goals and research strategies for implementation. As a former student at PUSD, I am invested in seeing change through real, non-discriminatory actions to change campus cultures across the district. Next is Raha Hamajan Escondido. As a student of the Poway district from elementary school up until high school graduation, I've seen my fair share of racism towards every minority group in Poway. Even myself as a minority have heard countless insults growing up and have faced racism on a day-to-day basis. I've seen racism thrive within our district, and there never seems to be any consequences for these actions. The victims should be heard, and these situations need to be dealt with a much higher force. It is time to make a change. People should be held accountable for their actions, and students should feel safe within their school environments. When there is racial bias, the party involved should be given disciplinary actions, and the voices of the victims should not be drowned out. Please provide a clear timeline of goals, plan for resource allocation, research strategy for implementation. As a previous student of PUSD, I am invested in seeing change through real anti-racist actions. Next is Olivia Diaz Bonilla Han, Poway. I would like to see specifics. Please provide a clear timeline of goals, plan for resource allocation, research strategy for implementation. As a graduated student of PUSD, my little sister is still in PUSD. I'm invested in seeing change through real anti-racist actions. These cannot be empty words. There needs to be action and an actual plan. Next is Munazil Abdullahi, San Diego. As a POC or person of color student in PUSD, here are my ideas. Educate your students further on POC history. Teach us beyond the idea that the only atrocity that happened to Black people was slavery and Jim Crow laws. The oppression that POCs have suffered stretch beyond a few hundred Black people picking cotton. It's because of this lack of education that students disregard POC oppression because it feels like something that should be, quote, gotten over with. Number 2, educate students on the civil rights movement beyond MLK, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. Teach us about the Black Panthers and Malcolm X. They were huge parts of the movement. Just because they didn't practice total peacefulness in their protests does not mean they should be erased from history. Teach us about empowered POCs in our history, the minority doctors, lawyers, inventors, and much more beyond that. Number 3, accountability, accountability, accountability. Many of the racist teachers and students reported to higher up staff members are never dealt with. They are rarely disciplined. Most likely, the victim is the one given the punishment. Number 4, the N-word is a word in hundreds of PUSD students' vocabularies. And when other students confront them about it, the racist students call them snowflakes that can't take a joke. This problem stems from the issue of lack of education. Teach us about the N-word and its bloody origins. Educate us on racism from a young age. I'm talking as young as kindergartners. It has been proven time and time again that racial bias starts very early in children's lives. If we are educated on stereotypes and racism early, uses of derogatory words such as the N-word will appear less and less in children's vocabularies. Being Black in PUSD can be a nightmare and has been a nightmare for so many POC students. I've seen and gone through more microaggressions and racist experiences in my time at PUSD schools that I'd like to say. And now I'm going to Westview High School, where the student demographic shows that the school is primarily white. Who knows what kind of prejudice I could face there? I, as many others, want change. We're counting on you. This is not a moment, it's a movement. Next is Megan Adams, Poway. I appreciate that PUSD has committed to change. However, we need to see the specifics of how anti-racist change will occur. We need faculty to have effective anti-bias training. We need to have a specific timeline on how these changes will occur in order for PUSD to move forward. Please don't let this commitment be nothing but empty words. PUSD needs to do its research and get its funding in order to take direct and specific action. These schools can't continue claiming to be no place for hate as long as racism is allowed to slip by in our classrooms. We must hold students and staff accountable for their words and actions through clearly stated disciplinary action to create a safe environment for students of color. We appreciate the sentiment of your written commitment, but this is not enough if you are actually committed to change in this school district. Next is Anna Mangiamelli, Poway. As a student that attended PUSD for all of my education up until college, I know racism has been tolerated in this district far too long. While I appreciate the quality education PUSD has given me, I also recognize that too often racially charged incidents are brushed aside to avoid confrontation and fully address the root of the problem. Students of color deserve to feel safe going to school every day, knowing their district will not tolerate discrimination. There needs to be a concrete plan so change will happen immediately. Students should be educated on racial issues in the classroom. Any acts of racism in or out of school must result in expulsion in every circumstance. There should be no gray area when it comes to this. If a student discriminates against others, they have no place feeling more safe at school than a minority student. Please provide a plan for the allocated resources and the changes that will be made. Next is Cecilia Diaz de Bonilla Han, Poway. I appreciate what the resolution is standing for, but I would like to see specifics. Please provide a clear timeline of goals and plans and research for implementation. As a student of PUSD, I'm invested in seeing change through real anti-racist actions. Next is Rowan Buzo, San Diego. Through recent current events, I personally feel that I've learned more about Black history and culture as well as LGBTQ+ history than I have in any history class at school. I want to say I feel that, but I know that our history books are whitewashed because somehow we, as not just a community, but a nation, are afraid to admit our previous and current faults to reveal the truth. As a student who has been in the PUSD system for about 10 years and is now going on to be a senior, I can confidently say that I have only ever had one Black teacher and one Asian teacher. It is extremely unfortunate to see such little cultural representation in not just our textbooks, but the staff as well. I feel that this may possibly be a contributor to the tolerance of racism and xenophobia within our schools, something that should never, ever be tolerated. We must all educate ourselves to create a safe, accepting learning environment for all students and staff. I would like to see that all students and staff responsible for making racist remarks or taking discriminatory action against POC are investigated and seriously punished for their unacceptable behavior. This is not an attack on an opinion, but an attack on hate. We spread the message of no place for hate throughout PUSD. So if we truly believe in that, then we must prove it to all those who have felt unheard. Students should be taken more seriously when these incidents occur. They're not being sensitive. It was not just a joke. It was hate, and they felt deeply hurt. Let their voices be heard. After action has been taken, I would like to see reform in the ways in which we teach American and world history. We have been continuously taught about the founding of the U.S. all throughout our years of education, but I would like to know more about the countries and nations that aren't talked about as often. African countries, South American countries, Asian countries, etc. One department that I felt have somewhat good representation of these nations is AP Art History, though we did spend about 3 months on European art and just a few weeks or days on indigenous artworks and history. In regards to US history, I would like to be taught about the prison pipelines, the redlining, and war on drugs as just a few examples. LGBTQ+ representation in history courses would also be amazing. Make those communities feel safe and represented. We must make a change, and we must make it now. Allow future generations to grow up with an education that refuses to put up a facade, but be genuine and diverse. I missed out on that type of education, but they may not. Next is Simran Jain, Poway. This resolution is not enough. We want accountability. Give us a specific timeline with resource allocation and research-backed solutions. Create checkpoints of progress that people can evaluate. We want anti-bias training and a written and standard code for discipline in cases of displayed racial bias for both students and teachers. This half-expletive resolution is insulting. You continue to lie about commitment, and we see through it. The students are angry, and this time we aren't leaving. You'll see us at the next meeting. We know about your corruption with the Shinoff law firm, Michelle, and given your history, it's hard to trust you to carry out racial justice in your schools. As you said in 2019, Ginger, it is the ultimate responsibility of the board, so stop politicking and actually do something about it. TJ, after the video of a PUSD student saying a racial slur came out, you stated, we'll make sure the rest of the comments are given to the board members.
Thank you very much. I know there were several more that we didn't get to. I'm not quite sure how many, but the board will receive hard copies of all of those. Thank you, Ms. Peck.
Correct.
At this time, I'd like to actually, rather than go to Ms. Osborne, if it's all right, this is a board-created resolution. I worked on this resolution with Dr. Patel with input from our student board member, Ms. Akins, and finally from Ms. Osborne and her department as well. I'd like to turn over the introduction of the resolution to Dr. Patel at this time.
I'd like to give a little bit of background on the resolution before we turn it over to Ms. Osborne to introduce it from the district perspective. So just so everyone knows where this came from, in the days after George Floyd's death, and seeing our local communities and the nation, as well as the international outrage about systemic racism and the social justice movement, on June 8th, I reached out to board member O'Connor Ratcliffe with a template resolution to fight racism and address systemic inequity. We both felt very deeply about the need to take action within our own district, and we wanted to do it in our capacity as board members. At that point, we did consider waiting for a CSBA template, as we've done in the past. However, we were both independently with face masks at the Candlelight Vigil in PQ, and heard from accounts from our own former POSD students and staff about specific incidences in our own school and in our own community. This made the call to action very urgent for both of us, and it brought it really close to home. So we didn't want to wait for a CSBA draft. We didn't want to wait to see other templates. We wanted to work with student board member Mariana Akins, as well as staff, to come up with a resolution of our own, a board-driven resolution. What does the board want to see happen? So while we were working on this draft, we saw the launch of the Instagram page, Black in PUSD. And that collective voice from our students and families is so powerful and so profound. We felt like we were speaking in concert with our community in this urgent call to action. And we feel like this is a good first step. It's maybe not even a first step. It's a step on the journey that we have been doing for a while now with programs that we've put in place. But this page provided the evidence that compelled us to make this call to action immediately instead of waiting any longer. And before I read the resolution out loud, I wanted to turn the microphone over to Ms. Osborne if she wanted to add any other comments to that.
Thank you. I just wanted to present this resolution for board approval, affirming Poway Unified School District's commitment to fight racism and correct systemic inequity. In recent weeks, our student leaders have organized peaceful walks in the community to use their voice for social justice and to bring focus to the urgent need to address issues of racism within our community and our schools. The recent social media post, Black in PUSD, amplifies the urgency for change within and across our schools. This resolution demonstrates the commitment of the board and district leadership to continue and strengthen our efforts around anti-bias training for all staff and ensure each and every student is treated with respect. We must eradicate racism from our schools and ensure issues are dealt with swiftly and directly to make it clear to all that racial slurs and behaviors that reflect racism won't be tolerated in Poway Unified.
So I do recognize, and I believe we all recognize, that this is going to be a team effort. It's not just the board having a call to action. It's the district staff working with our communities and our students and our staff as well. So I'm going to read this resolution, and I would like to know, Ms. Akins, would you like to join me in reading it? Would you like to take paragraphs or?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so do you want to go first? We can take turns with whereases.
Okay. So, whereas recent racially charged incidents have impacted many of our students and many members of our community, we are now called upon to be visible in our resolve to work for change. And
whereas the heightened level of civic engagement from our students and communities serve as an opportunity to work even harder to address the racial, cultural, and ethnic disparities in our schools. And
whereas schools are the cornerstones of communities and educators play an important role in influence perceptions and processes. And
as the Poway Unified School District and Board of Education will continue to take an unwavering stand against racism and discrimination in all forms. And
whereas valuing the diversity that exists among our students, staff, families, and community members is integral to our district's vision of creating culture and conditions to empower world-class learners. And
whereas we believe that we, individually and collectively, must fulfill the board's goal to empower student success by ensuring that all learning environments are safe, inclusive, innovative, and equitable for every person, regardless of their skin color or ethnicity. And
whereas the board recognizes that achievement and discipline disparities for students of color persist despite this goal. And
whereas the underserved minority students being disproportionately overrepresented in discipline, statistics, and underachieving compared to peers A through G requirements in rigorous classes, even though these students have the same academic potential and all bring unique, valuable perspectives and experiences to our classrooms. And
whereas our classrooms are an ideal environment to provide racially and culturally relevant curriculum resources, including literature, selections, and historical perspectives from diverse voices, and the board urges the district to keep this fact in the forefront as we continue to review our district's curriculum and course offerings. And
whereas the district has adopted response to intervention and positive behavior interventions and support practices, whereby Tier 1 supports can be applied to teach anti-racism at all grade levels. And
whereas Poway Unified School District values the different cultures and ethnicities of our workforce and is committed to anti-racist leadership and inclusive working environments where each person is treated with respect and dignity. And
whereas the board recognizes that our district would benefit from having a racially and ethnically diverse staff that matches our student population, that the presence of diverse employees helps to stop negative stereotypes, promotes acceptance of diversity and equity, influences the culture of our schools, and increases role models and mentors for students of color, and that for these reasons, the district will work towards the goal of hiring and retaining diverse staff, administrators, teachers, and counselors. And
whereas the board is committed to our goal of providing high-quality professional learning for teachers and staff, including supporting and expanding ongoing work with cultural proficiency and anti-bias training to cultivate a culture of trust and cultural relevance. And
whereas the problems of society are mirrored in schools, and these problems can only be fully addressed with a united effort of community and school coming together for the betterment of our students' future. And
whereas the board recognizes the district's productive relationships with racial equity-focused parent and student groups like Concerned Parent Alliance / College Bound, Small and Mighty, No Place for Hate, Black Student Union, and Social Justice Club, and knows that the district must do even more to further the board's goal of engaging parents, business, and community partners to foster shared responsibility and accountability.
Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved and ordered that President O'Connor Ratcliffe, would you like to read? You're the president.
Certainly. The Poway Unified School District will examine and confront the biases in our own school district and actively engage with staff, students, and families and our whole community to address problematic practices that are contributing to unfair, inequitable outcomes. And keep going? Oh, all right. And be it further resolved that the Poway Unified School District will seek to better align our resources to meet the diverse and dynamic needs of all students, staff, and community. And be it further resolved that the Poway Unified School District reaffirms its commitment to fighting racism in all its forms and correcting systemic inequity in order to fulfill our district vision of creating culture and conditions to empower world-class learners and a mission of inspiring passion and preparing every student to thrive in college, career, and life by providing personalized, rich, and rigorous learning experiences. Thanks, everyone. I think that was worth reading every paragraph. At this time, I'd love for a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. Is there a second? And a second by Ms. Couvret. Any further discussion or comments by any of the board members?
I just want to say you guys did a fabulous job on this. Oh, I'm sorry, Ariana, I didn't.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll finish and then I'll hand it over to you. I just want to say you guys did a fantastic job on this. And, listening to the remarks, I really hope that we can make a district-wide accountability and responsibility and make it so it's measurable and really hold people accountable so this change can happen. So when people look back on this resolution, they go, wow, they didn't just write words. They really did this. So thank you guys for an amazing first step in this.
Sorry if I start crying ahead of time, but I just wanted to say, I know that there's a lot of students watching right now who had public comments and wanted to add things. And I want to say to the students who are watching that I apologize for not doing more during the beginning of my tenure as student board member to represent people of color in our district. I know I helped out with No Place for Hate, but as a young Black woman growing up in this district, I know the trials and tribulations that you can face. I know what it's like to be the only one in the room, and I should have done more, and I apologize, but looking forward, even though I'm graduating, I will check back in and I will help as much as I can. So, thanks.
I would like to also state that I wish I had done more, and for that, I'm sincerely sorry. As the mother of 4 children who've graduated from Poway Unified, I thought I was fairly well informed on these issues. And the Black and PUSD Instagram site informed me that I was not well informed as to this epidemic of racism and bigotry that exists in our district, involving unfortunately both staff and students. And this can't go unaddressed. It's a terrific resolution, but as we all know, resolutions are symbolic, and usually they're the first step to actionable plans. And many of those actions have been recommended by community members, and I wanted to also add some of my own thoughts as far as how our board can move forward at our next board meetings this year to put in place some actionable plans. So I think one item to consider is our Character Counts program. It was for a long time a wonderful program that was grant funded by an anonymous benefactor. And I would suggest that program now be replaced by an anti-racism campaign. We also have currently existing in place in the district a waste, fraud, and abuse hotline. And I suspect it's not ringing off the hook at this point. And I would like to have that be transformed into a hotline for either anonymous or non-anonymous reports, complaints about issues of bigotry and racism. Third, as the police reform has gotten off the ground very quickly due to all of the protests of late, one of the reforms is mandatory reporting. You see a fellow officer abuse their position of power, you're required to report it. In the same way, our district should have mandatory reporting requirements for our staff when they see this kind of inappropriate, deeply disturbing behavior. And then fourth, the board needs to come up with some policies. Normally, our go-to for policies is the California School Boards Association model policies, and we can certainly look to those as the broader policy level. But when we get down to the procedures with regard to a progressive disciplinary action, we can potentially come up with those ourselves. And finally, as has been recommended by many of the letter writers who've written to myself and other members of the board, we should be looking into supplemental curriculum to bridge that gap with the historical teachings that we currently have to supplement the current materials with the history and stories of people of color and the integral roles that they've played in the history of our nation. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. I'd like to echo something that you just said, in that for myself as well, I guess I always felt like I understood the issues. I knew what was going on. But for me, it was really the candlelight vigil that I attended in Penasquitos that really, where students and alumni and staff spoke, that it became real to me, that it's not just happening somewhere else, it's happening here. That didn't seem real to me, I think, until then. And once you know, you have to do better. And I think this was the declaration of our intent to do better and in what ways we want to do better. And I don't think that this is exhaustive by any means, but I think as a board introduced and a board driven resolution, this is not a moment where we want to congratulate ourselves for recognizing the problem and writing it down and passing this resolution. We clearly, as a board, I know I expect concrete actions and plans, possibly the timelines coming out soon, like many of our commenters requested. I think that is the natural next step from this. But I would add that this is a first step, board driven. A board is not in the position to make all of those decisions in a policy as a first step. We look to our staff experts to move to that next step for us. And I'm excited to see what comes out of this. And I think this is notice that the board is going to keep this at the forefront. We're ready to move and we want to see action and we want it right away. And this hits us at summer. So there's time to plan and time to start moving before fall. That's all for me. That's all. We do have a motion and a second, unless there are other comments. Thank you for Ms. Akins.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And for the rest of us, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Whew, it seems a little anticlimactic here to move on, but we do have some more agenda items. Item 8.5, approval of our 2020-2021 Local Control Accountability Plan, Federal Addendum, Immigrant Provision. Ms. Osborne.
Thank you. Poway Unified's LCAP addendum was approved by the board in June 2019. However, at that time, we did not qualify for immigrant funding, so it was not included in the addendum because our numbers of qualifying immigrant students in the fall of 2018 was lower than previous years. In the fall of 2019, our count went up, the required amount, so we will receive the funding for 2020-21, which needs to be reflected in the LCAP addendum immigrant provision. And just as background, LEAs must have a minimum of 21 eligible immigrant students and experience a 1% or greater growth in the enrollment of eligible immigrant students to be eligible. So tonight we seek your approval of the LCAP addendum immigrant provision that reflects the addition of Title III immigrant funds for 2020-21.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. I looked closely at the plan for spending this money. I think it's great. I'm excited. I thank you for finding out the information about what gave us that eligibility from last year to this year. Thank you. I know that I had asked and we just thought it was, well, we had more numbers. So thanks for the specificity there. I appreciate that. Are there any questions for Ms. Osborne? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
On a motion by Dr. Patel, second by Ms. Couvrette. We have a preferential vote first from our student board member.
Aye.
Taken. Aye. Thank you. And everyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
That looks unanimous. Thanks very much. Takes us to 9.1. Approval of resolution number 72-2020 entitled Supporting Safe Firearms Storage. Mr. Mizell.
So student safety continues to be one of the Board of Education's highest priorities. It's in recognition of this fact that the following resolution related to the safe storage of firearms is being brought forward. Resolution number 72-2020 ensures parents and legal guardians are fully informed of their responsibilities for keeping firearms out of the hands of unauthorized users. Firearms should be securely stored when not in use, whether in a safe, vault, or other locked box, or with a trigger or cable lock. Safe storage of firearms reduces firearm-related violence, suicides, accidental shootings by children, and thefts of firearms. Studies have shown that 73% of children under 10 know where their parents' firearms are stored, and 36% have actually handled them, even in homes where parents believe their children do not know where the firearm is located. Other data shows that suicide by firearm is often an impulsive act occurring within 5 minutes of ideation. Reminding our community of the importance of practicing responsible firearm ownership and preventing unauthorized use of firearms is in everyone's best interest. The board has asked for those reasons to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mizell. Are there any questions at this time? I'd like to thank Mr. Mizell for your very patient work with me and Mr. Zane for our last minute and late night suggestions. I really appreciate it. I think what is presented to the board today is excellent. So thank you very much for your patience. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. I was going to say I helped write this one too, so I'll second that. On a motion by Ms. Beatty, second by O'Connor Ratcliffe. And Ms. Akins has a preferential vote here.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And everyone else, all in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 9.2 is a public hearing and approval of the 2020-2021 annual service plan and annual budget plan for the special education local plan area, the SELPA. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Mizell to introduce, and then I'll open the public hearing. Does that sound right? Okay, Mr. Mizell.
So the California Department of Education requires that each special education local plan area, or SELPA, develop a service and budget plan component to the local plan. The annual service plan describes the full continuum of services that ensures access to appropriate instruction and services for all students with disabilities from birth to 22 years of age, including children with low incidence disabilities. The annual budget plan provides an overview of anticipated special education revenue and expenditures for the 2020-2021 school year. It's necessary that the board approve after a public hearing the annual service plan and annual budget plan to be incorporated in the Poway Unified School District's local plan for special education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mizell. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, we have a huge continuum of services from preschool all the way through to a transition program. So almost every possible code number is used in this, and we receive pots of money from a lot of different places to help with the services, and they are quite varied. So I appreciate all the work here. Is there a motion to, wait, before a motion, I need to open a public hearing. At this time, I will open the public hearing at 9:16 p.m. Are there any public comments?
President O'Connor Ratcliffe, there are no public comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peck. Then at this time, I will close the public hearing at 9:17 p.m. Thank you. Back to the board. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Couvret. On a motion by Ms. Couvret, a second by Dr. Patel, it looks like. Any discussion? All right, for our preferential vote, Ms. Akins.
Aye.
Thank you. And for everyone else, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Moser. And we're getting there. This takes us to 12.1, board member reports. Let's start with our student. Well, should we keep her for last or first? Oh, I've made her go first every time. Let's not change tradition. Ms. Akins, for your final student board member reports, you're up.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening to my fellow board members and to those viewing the final board meeting of the school year with us tonight. Before I begin my final report, I would like to extend my condolences to those people around the world losing their lives to COVID-19, to board member Zane and his family in regards to his late mother, and the several members of the Black community that are disappearing mysteriously and being killed in the streets without justice being served right now across the country. I also want to raise awareness to the crisis in Yemen right now, where they are fighting a pandemic, epidemic, famine, and a war all at once. So I implore all of you to do appropriate research and help Yemen in any way you can. In other news, I was able to join the ADL's Kelsey Young in a candid conversation via Zoom for KPBS Midday Edition Radio, where I was able to discuss how race is intertwined with our educational systems. Especially in today's climate, I thought the discussion was a great way for us to identify problems in our schools that have very feasible solutions. The Superintendent Student Advisory Council had its last meeting a few days following our previous board meeting. It was, of course, not the way we all intended to say goodbye to each other, but I must give Dr. Phelps and Ms. Peck the utmost praise for making it as special as possible and for being the greatest advisors one could ask for. I hope next year you guys can top our No Place for Hate conference, although I know it's going to be hard to top that, but I hope you guys can. And in other news, I also graduated since our last virtual meeting, which was a very bittersweet moment. I applaud high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools for making the class of 2020 feel so special despite these unprecedented times. The committees that helped plan these events did a great job, and I loved seeing the heavy student involvement during the planning process. Personally, I was a mess during my drive-through ceremony with tears running on my face like tonight because I was able to see some of the teachers who were crucial in my development to the person I am today, and not being able to give them hugs or the appreciation they deserved was very hard for me, but it was great to see them again and graduate. So ESS at our elementary school level is up and running with the proper COVID-19 accommodations to ensure the safety of both students and the staff. I can say both the adults and children are extremely happy to be with each other again and have another great summer. I'd also like to praise the students who have used their platforms online to promote unity and understanding amongst people of all sorts of backgrounds. I've come across accounts like Black and PUSD on Instagram, where Black students from all high schools have anonymously shared their experiences with prejudice and racism in our district. As heartbreaking as some of the stories may be, it does help administrators and staff do a better job in the future. And as mentioned previously, I do believe that it would be a great time for us to change curriculums because we know all about Rockefeller, but we don't know about the C.J. Walkers in our history books. I don't know if any of you guys have TikTok, but our district has gotten a lot of popularity on the app and not in the best way possible. They've talked about how racism in certain communities is higher than other communities, and Poway is a very popular school on TikTok and not in the best way. So I feel like that's something we should definitely try to fix in the future. And looking to the future, I was able to participate in virtual art orientation and several meetings for my future academic and athletic career at TCU. If the already increasing spike of COVID-19 cases in Texas doesn't get too overwhelming for my school, I should be leaving in less than 3 weeks. I've already had to say some tough goodbyes to some of my closest friends who have already reported to college. And I look forward to seeing the great things my fellow peers in the class of 2020 accomplish in years to come. And finally, I would like to thank Dr. Phelps, Ms. Peck, Ms. Marshall, and my fellow board members for all they have done to make my tenure as a student board member unforgettable. It's been very hard for me to find the words to express how grateful I am for this experience, and I can only hope that I have served the 36,000 students in our district well as their representative. I've been able to get to know some of you very well, and you've taught me how to find my voice amongst people who don't always want to listen, persevere through adversity, ask questions unapologetically, and never be ashamed in what I'm passionate about. Of course, I hoped the second half of the school year would have been different for me to tie up some loose ends and to be able to fulfill the meetings and plans I had prepared for myself, but I am still forever grateful for all I was able to do before coronavirus memes flooded the internet. My experience within Poway Unified has been nothing short of a miracle, and I am so blessed to be a part of Team PUSD. Thank you again for a unique and incredible year. And with that, I conclude my report.
Whew. Thank you, Dr. Patel.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Mariana, you will certainly be missed on this board. You'll have to come back and visit us, maybe virtually even. Throw in a public comment once in a while. You can do that from Texas.
You already know I will.
Typically, during this time, I would report on what meetings I've attended and what I've learned in my various organizations that I'm part of. And while there have been plenty of Zoom meetings about the pandemic and the budget crisis, there's something more important and more fundamental that I wanted to comment on during my report time. Last year, when we updated our vision and mission statements, I took that responsibility very seriously. I understood that these statements attest to our purpose, our goals, and our values. The vision statement that we settled on, which you see behind me here, is creating culture and conditions to empower world-class learners. With our mission statement, inspiring passion and preparing every student to thrive in college and career and life by providing personalized, rich, and rigorous learning experiences. What I'm learning through these recent petitions, the Instagram accounts, and conversations with our students is that we really do need to do more. We need to amplify and focus our efforts in creating those cultures, creating that culture and those conditions. We have heard this urgent call for change, and we must accelerate our call to action. Our students deserve a safe and inclusive school environment. And based on our very own student accounts, that doesn't always seem to be the case. While I have been reflecting on our student voice over these past few weeks, and at times I struggle with understanding whether we've made any significant progress at all as a society, from when I was in high school decades ago and had to suffer a wide range of what we call microaggressions now, and even blatant racist attacks from my peers and in my community. I know that our district has updated our policies. I know we've implemented training and supported our student programs and parent groups, but I also want to acknowledge that the results are neither consistent or universal yet. And all of this bothers me, but as an optimist, as a problem solver, I'm driven to action, and I know we all are. As we said in our resolution tonight, we need to examine and confront the biases in our policies, in our procedures, in our curriculum, and in our instruction. We need to foster a renewed partnership and trust between our students, our families, and our staff, where we will all hold each other accountable to those new policies and procedures and revise them when they're insufficient. We need to clearly communicate those procedures to our students and families and modify them when we're not getting the outcomes that are aligned with our values. We still have so much work to do, but the resolution we passed today is an important step on this journey to implementing our vision. And I look forward to seeing the plan and its implementation as we progress along developing it. While I certainly don't know all of the possible solutions or strategies at this moment, I am very confident that we will get there by leveraging our community relationships, by listening to students and families, and by being proactive on behalf of our entire community. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. Ms. Beatty.
Thank you. Very briefly, I just want to wish Mariana all the best. We will all miss you. but we can't wait to see all that you achieve. And I hope that someday I'll be able to come and watch you play a soccer game at a very high level. So best of luck to you. And I also want to thank staff, Christine Pegg, for reading all those public comments. There's more than usual, and that's not normally even a board job, since it's usually members of the public who are reciting their own comments. So thank you very much for that. And Ms. Burks for doing all the technical wizardry to get us all online, and all of staff. I just want to express my appreciation, and I'm sure this goes for the entire board, for allowing these meetings to take place very smoothly. So thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. Ms. Couvrette.
So as usual, because I'm not as eloquent, I wrote down my thoughts. And so we've had lots of sleepless nights again. I didn't realize what this job was going to entail. But 2020 has been quite a year. And one thing that stands out is education is truly fundamental to a successful society. But it's good, quality, equitable education that will lead to students finding their passions, with good jobs, decrease incarceration rates, and decrease dependency on welfare. As we saw with the distance learning experiment, it was really emergency learning. Our leadership and staff did an absolutely amazing job and worked beyond our dreams. But a district our size can't change the way we do things in 3 weeks. That would usually take 3 years. And what we saw is that people of means were able to have the time to invest in homeschooling, afford tutors, and seek other educational opportunities for their own kids. But some homes were not a safe place for the students. And there may have been stress, addictions, abuse, and negligence. So public education gets me emotional, because to me, it's the greatest equalizer. Where everyone gets the opportunity to learn and thrive. So as a glass half full person, I am really motivated to really make positive changes in two main ways with these experiences. First, the classroom of 2019 and 1919 kind of looked rather similar. And now with one-to-one devices, online resources, partnerships with private companies and community colleges, I hope we can see a change in how we teach this generation, because they don't need rote memorization, because they're comfortable with the technology at their fingertips. Second, regarding the murder of Floyd and our demonstrations, the past 2 weeks, I was able to talk to a number of young adults. I'm surrounded by our upcoming seniors, which is a pleasure. Our future is extremely bright with this generation. These are kids that care deeply about our environment and our community, and they're not self-centered like I'm sure I was when I was a teenager. My daughter showed me Black and POSD when there was only tens of followers. And I continued to read it as more and more people took the time and had the courage to write just heartbreaking stories. And if someone doesn't feel safe and valued and belonging, how can we expect them to care about the Fertile Crescent? Let's see here. So my daughter participated in the MCHS protest that walked up to the police station. And these kids were peaceful, respectful, and they're all wearing masks. So they're responsible as well. I also had a wonderful lunch with Emily Bleisma, who will be our next board representative, who I know worked very closely with Mariana. And she also works very closely with the ADL and No Place for Hate, and other ways about bringing racism change. And this is something that she's extremely passionate about. So I'm excited to see the continuation of a strong student representative. And I hope that with today's resolution, we can actually start to make a difference. Sorry, page 2, but there's not much left. A couple of nights ago, I was invited to join the Facebook group called Erase. And this is Educators Ending Racism and Supporting Equity in PUSD. Don't know if y'all have seen this yet, But I am so proud of these incredible teachers that we have in PUSD. Change starts with education and accountability, and the resources that they're sharing on the site and the camaraderie makes me think that 2020 is going to be a pivotal year with students and teachers empowering and speaking out about racism and bigoted remarks. So as we pass the budget that the governor and legislator is going to change, we must put public education as the most important expense of our government, because through education, we can make the changes necessary in our community. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good summer.
Good ending note. So obviously a lot has happened since our last meeting on June 2nd. First of all, 13 weeks after leaving campuses, we ended our school year with very festive drive-through promotions and graduations. I was able to attend Adobe Bluffs, Mesa Verde, Mount Carmel, and Westview, and all of them had a little bit different personality to them. They were all wonderful. The students and families were amazing. And it was clear that the students were making the most of a difficult situation by making it fun and making it unique to them, something that hopefully no other class will ever experience. I spent a significant amount of time lobbying our elected officials for budget help. And it's good to know that those efforts were not wasted. We don't always get everything we want, but if we don't ask, we won't get anything. I was at the CAC, the Community Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Commission? Oh, shoot. Special Education Parents Partnering with the District. I was at their final meeting, and when we heard their presentation earlier, you could really get the feel. Those super dedicated parent volunteers, though, working with another super dedicated Associate Superintendent Mizell and his staff. They worked so successfully to improve our community relations and really to build a special education family. There's always work to do, but it sure is nice to get to that work when the feeling is so positive and productive. So I'd like to thank everyone involved this year for that. I guess so many moral imperatives have inserted themselves quickly in addition to the ones that we were already working to address. So I've been learning as much as I can, expanding my to-do list exponentially. We're working on the details of a safe reopening plan for fall that's, amidst guidelines from health officials that are changing quickly. This alone could take up all of our bandwidth, but it can't, because we're working with community members, including our students, to follow through on all the areas outlined in the equity and anti-racism resolution that we just passed. And we do have work with a capital W-O-R-K to do, not the least of which is working harder to cultivate that culture of trust on our campuses where students don't hesitate to report incidences of racism and other inappropriate behavior, where they don't fear retaliation. They know there will be timely follow through to address the problem. It's a problem, and we're working on that right now, and we got to keep it going. I'm really excited for the new partnerships that are already forming so we can work on it together as a PUSD family. And though some in our community, and I'll admit I am in part as well, newly awakening to the issues, or at least their severity. Dr. Phelps and her team, everyone on this screen and more, have been working on them for years. This includes the work of getting rid of staff who are damaging to our students. This work, too, is always ongoing. I fully support current efforts to intensify those efforts. And finally, I'm really proud of our students, our families, our teachers, our staff, who am I leaving out? Administrators, cabinet, and Dr. Phelps, our superintendent, for your incredibly hard work, your flexibility, sense of adventure, that can-do attitude this year where there has been no manual. We say that over and over again, but in fact, PUSD was writing the manual for many of our peer districts, and that speaks volumes. I am very proud to be a part of Poway Unified. As I always tell my family in an encouraging way, Ratcliffes do hard things. We all can do hard things. So go Team PUSD. Farewell to Mariana. We won't have another student board member like you anytime soon. Happy summer to everyone. Everyone, good luck in your next chapters. Thank you. Dr. Phelps, your turn.
Thank you. I'd like to start out on my report with a final thank you and a farewell to our amazing student board member, Mariana Higgins. This is her final meeting. Mariana has served faithfully and courageously in her role, and I think everyone in this room can agree that you have made quite an impact. As a student board member, you attended every meeting, took the time to meet with staff and understand complicated agenda items, and advocated for facility improvements for your school and for PUSD. As part of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, you led the district level work to expand No Place for Hate for younger students in elementary and middle school campuses, and represented the student voice when it came to our LCAP survey, alternative graduation plans, and so much more. I know what you said earlier about apologizing for feeling like you could do more, but you know what, Mariana, like you, I always feel like there's always more that we can do. And what we know is we can always do better, but you've done a lot. And I don't want you to not receive that credit and know that you were an amazing student board member. And through it all, Mariana, you have been so positive, proactive. You stood firm on your beliefs and equity and diversity for all of our students. And we are so proud of you. And please know that you will be greatly, greatly missed. We wish you luck at Texas Christian University. We know that you are destined for great things. I'm still going to keep on working on you to convince you to go into education, because we need more leaders and role models like you. You've been a fabulous role model for the other students, student bodies. And like I told you before, I may have been the first minority woman superintendent in Poway Unified, but you can be our first Black woman female superintendent in Poway Unified. And so I'm going to keep pushing you, and I'm always going to be here for you. But on behalf of the board and the cabinet, we have a gift for you. So don't leave without getting it. We just wish you well. And so it's a small gift of our appreciation for your service. And so please know that our hearts are with you. And it's really hard for me to see you leave, because I feel like we built such a special connection, and you just did such an amazing job in representing our students on this board. So thank you. So Team PUSD, yay. We have many things to celebrate, including the success of our graduates, over 2,600 of them. Congratulations to our class of 2020. Board members, cabinet members, and I had the opportunity to attend multiple drive-through graduation ceremonies at our schools in probably the record heat ever of San Diego. Over 100 degrees in velvet gowns was a lovely experience. But we had the wonderful opportunity to watch all of our graduates, and they were honored in a very special way by all of our staff and teachers and principals. And I congratulate you for making that special for all of our students. I appreciate how our schools were able to pull off such a personal and unique drive-through parade and experience and videos. I love witnessing the joy and excitement displayed by our students as they return to their schools in celebration of their achievements despite challenging circumstances with the shelter in place and our distance learning. It's in these moments when, as educators, we realize the impact of all of our hard work as we shared in our students' successes and accomplishments. I had a chance to thank our principals for their efforts on our Zoom call last week, but I wanted to extend my sincere thanks to all of Team PUSD. We did it. We made it through one of the most challenging and unprecedented years ever in education together. So congratulations, and thank you so much for your leadership and your service to our students. Now, I hope our employees can all have an opportunity to take some time off and relax with their loved ones before we need to ramp back up for our 2021 school year. I want to thank all of staff and students and parents who took the time to provide input and feedback on PUSD's reopening plans over multiple Zooms and physical distancing in-person meetings as we face this challenge together. I want to thank Associate Superintendent Osborne, Dr. Bergs, and their teams, as well as Directors Chad Coster and Tim Purvis for their help in the development and their input on our reopening plan. We couldn't have done it without all of you and your leadership. I want to also thank and congratulate Director Barbara Schull, Assistant Director Michelle Manos and Wilson, and their team on a very successful reopening of our ESS and preschool last week. I've heard nothing but fabulous feedback from all of our parents who have kids that are in that program, while trying to ensure that our kids get a fun opportunity and get to come back to our campus, but also ensuring our students' safety while they're here on campus. So thank you for that. What a year to retire, Barbara. Fantastic job on creating processes and plans so that our families could have a fun and safe option for their childcare this summer. So congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for your service in our district. I'm also pleased that our aquatics program, our youth enrichment program, and our extended school years program are all gearing up for the opening of summer as well. And I'd like to ask that you please look at our board packet for our full student and school recognitions in 12.2. But in the interest of time, I'd like to just highlight one in particular. Abraxas High School was recently awarded the 2020 California Continuation Education Association Exemplary Program Award for the student-run aquaponics and compost garden. And according to CCEA, the designation of an exemplary program provides recognition for the individual schools and districts and their ideas that benefit the needs of at-risk students and continuity of services. Through this, other continuation or alternative high schools throughout the state might be able to replicate the program or project to benefit their own communities. And to date, the Abraxas Garden has donated thousands of pounds of fresh produce to needy families throughout our community. So congratulations. Speaking of agriculture, due to the pandemic, you all know that San Diego County Fair has been canceled. I'm really sad. It's one of my favorite summer events, which was especially disappointing to our Poway High Ag program and the FFA, oh my gosh, my computer is about to shut down. Okay. FFA students. They spent months caring for and raising a total of 43 animals. Well, they will be participating in the first ever virtual junior livestock auction, which starts tomorrow, and the students will be showing their animals via video conference to potential buyers. We wish them the best of luck. I'm excited to announce Poway Unified's 3 nominations for California School Board Association's Golden Bell Awards. CSBA's Golden Bell Award promotes excellence in education by recognizing outstanding programs in school districts throughout California. And school districts may submit up to 3 entries. So our first submission is in the career technical education category and the purpose and passion in Poway Unified. The program has expanded CTE beyond the typical 9th through 12th grade focus to include intentional experiences for students beginning in elementary school. We have developed a career development continuum that describes by grade level the experiences necessary for students to graduate career ready. The desired result is for every student to develop an awareness of self and vision for the future that connects to the educational experience. Our second submission is the technology category. The Voyager program supports ongoing innovation in our classrooms by creating new and exciting ways to use technology as an instructional tool to support students' engagement with curriculum. USD has invested many hours into providing professional development and embedded coaching to empower our teachers to transform student learning and to prepare students with the skills necessary to be successful in today's technological world. Our third submission is the school culture and safety category for our No Place for Hate and SAVE program and SAI programs have collectively improved school culture and student safety on our school campuses. These student-led efforts have resulted in an increased vigilance in our schools against threats of violence, bias, and bullying, as well as increased understanding and tolerance for diversity and differences. On the topic of diversity, I wanted to acknowledge that PUSD still has a lot of work to do in fighting racism. Thank you to our Board of Education for passing today's anti-racism resolution. We are all saddened and angered by the stories of racism that our students of color have encountered throughout our district. I repeat what I said at our last meeting. Education plays a key role in the fight against racial injustice and oppression. It is a critical part of our jobs to instill self-worth and confidence in all of our students so that they can reach their fullest potential as world-class learners. We are committed to change. We need to do better. We will do better. We are actively recruiting more diverse staff, implementing more diverse curriculum, and will continue and expand our training for staff and students. I have asked staff to create an equity improvement plan for PUSD so that we can continue this work in collaboration with our students and parents, and we can have measurable steps as we are taking forward fighting racism in PUSD. Also, tonight, we adopted the 2021 proposed budget, which was based on the governor's May revise. While we know that this has changed with the new budget that the governor has agreed to, it's still a very sobering situation for school districts to be facing. Kudos to Associate Superintendent Ron Little, Joy Romero, and their team on their efforts. It's been incredibly challenging to continue to try and balance our budget while receiving conflicting and dire information from our state. We are relieved to hear that the governor and legislature agreed to preserve spending for our K-12 schools. But however, over the summer, we have many summer projects still underway. So thank you in advance to our business support services and our facility staff for all of your hard work. Finally, we would like to congratulate our dear colleagues who have left PUSD due to promotion or retirement. Thank you for your passion and dedication on behalf of our schools and our students. And I hope that all of you have a wonderful summer. And thank you, Mariana, and goodbye. And I want to thank you all for your service and have a wonderful and relaxing summer. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phelps. That takes us to adjournment, where we're going to have to put that off for a little while. We are actually going to close down here and reconvene to closed session to continue item 2.6B. So I will close down our open session at 9:48. We'll go to close, then we'll come back to report out. So 9:48.